Chapter 2050. Boom! An invisible spiritual energy suddenly formed a barrier around the Dragon Lord token, completely blocking the power of the primogenitor's fifth move. Sure enough, it's a trap. It's just a small restriction. Do you think you can stop me? Long Wuxian sneered. He didn't care about the restriction on the Dragon Lord token at all. In his opinion, no matter how powerful the restriction was, it was only set up by Chu Fengmian. He didn't even care about the half-step celestial being Chu Fengmian, let alone this small restriction. Break it! Long Wuxian let out a long roar and took a step forward. The power of his dragon claw became even stronger. With a bang, his palm landed on the invisible barrier. The vast and mighty power bombarded the invisible barrier, intending to shatter it. However, at this moment, ancient characters suddenly appeared on the Dragon Master token. No one could see the origin of these ancient characters clearly, but when they appeared, they were all shocked. The ancient words appeared one after another. They were like the eyes of a formation as they gathered together and formed a huge formation. This large array was simply unfathomable. All the power bombarding it didn't leave a single mark. I can't break it? Long Wuxian's eyes were filled with anger. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian wasn't worthy of being his opponent at all. However, Chu Fengmian had only set up a restriction on the Dragon Lord token, yet he couldn't break it. Long Wuxian felt extremely annoyed when he saw the countless gazes of the surrounding people on him. Suddenly, his body expanded wildly and turned into a huge dragon. This dragon was very similar to the ancient war dragon. However, it didn't have the temperament of the ancient war dragon. This was Long Wuxian's original form, the ancient Tianlong. In order to break this restriction, Long Wuxian didn't hold back any of his strength. He transformed into his original form and bombarded the restriction. However, the array formed by the ancient characters was extremely sturdy. No matter how he bombarded it, it couldn't be shaken at all. What kind of restriction is this? Even Long Wuxian can't break a single restriction? How terrifying is Lord Dragon Master's strength? Even Long Wuxian couldn't do anything about it after he set up a seal? The reason why he acted so arrogantly before was because the true experts of our Blue Dragon sect didn't make a move. Now that the Dragon Lord hasn't made a move, even Long Wuxian can't do anything about this restriction. Everyone from the Blue Dragon sect began to discuss among themselves when they saw this scene. They were incomparably delighted. Long Wuxian was arrogant and despotic before, and did not put the Blue Dragon sect in his eyes at all, which made them incomparably angry. Now that they saw Long Wuxian suffer, they naturally shouted happily. Damn it! These discussions were not concealed at all. Long Wuxian heard them all. His eyes were filled with boundless killing intent as he swept his gaze across everyone below. Long Wuxian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He couldn't wait to kill all the people from the Blue Dragon sect. What? You can't even break a few small restrictions? The so-called genius of the Thousand Dragons country only has this much ability? At this moment Chu Fengmian, who was sitting on the throne, spoke. Chu Fengmian was half lying on the throne with a relaxed expression. Even from his face, one could see that he wasn't worried that the restriction would be broken by Long Wuxian. It seemed that in Chu Fengmian's heart, he didn't think that Long Wuxian could break the restriction on the Dragon Lord token. If you can't do it, then leave obediently. Otherwise, you'll be asking for trouble later. Chu Fengmian said faintly. Although these words sounded like persuasion, Long Wuxian felt that it was incomparably sarcastic. Kid, don't be arrogant. It's just a restriction. It's easy for me to break it. I just didn't want to waste my strength just now. Long Wuxian snorted coldly. If I use my full strength, breaking this restriction will be a piece of cake. Is that so? Then I'll wait and see. Chu Fengmian said indifferently. Chu Fengmian's attitude infuriated Long Wuxian. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and he couldn't wait to kill Chu Fengmian. Who was he? He was a genius from the country of 10,000 dragons. In the ancient Tianlong clan, he was in existence with an incomparably tyrannical bloodline. He was a great figure in the country of 10,000 dragons. Now he was being ridiculed by Chu Fengmian. If it wasn't for the importance of the Dragon Lord token, he wouldn't have cared about it. He would have killed Chu Fengmian right away. In order to obtain the Dragon Lord token, Long Wuxian could only suppress his killing intent and concentrate on dealing with the restriction on the Dragon Lord token. As for Chu Fengmian, it would be the time of his death when he obtained the Dragon Lord token. Not only Chu Fengmian, but the entire Blue Dragon sect would be killed. Tianlong. Long Wuxian looked at the Dragon Lord token and his eyes suddenly widened. 2 rays of light were emitted from his eyes, as if they could see through everything. The Tianlong clan's Tianlong? Chu Fengmian sat on the throne and looked at Long Wuxian's eyes with interest. The primordial dragon clan had inherited a part of the progenitor Tianlong's strength. For example, the primordial war dragon was the purest. They had inherited the progenitor Tianlong's fighting spirit. The primordial golden dragon clan had inherited the progenitor Tianlong's tyrannical physical body. The primordial divine dragon clan had inherited the progenitor Tianlong's Tao of space. The primordial Tianlong clan had inherited the progenitor Tianlong's eyes. This was a secret technique of the dragon clan called Tianlong's eyes. Only the primordial Tianlong clan, which had an incomparably pure bloodline, could cultivate this technique. This pair of eyes could see the 9 heavens and the netherworld. There was nothing that they couldn't see. Ordinary restriction formations would be seen through by this heavenly dragon's eye with a single glance. Long Wuxian was indeed capable. Although Chu Fengmian had heard of the Tianlong's eye's secret technique, this was the first time he had seen it. So that's how it is. Long Wuxian used the Tianlong's eyes to scan the restriction formation around the Dragon Lord token. The layout of the restriction formation and the location of the formation were all seen clearly by his eyes. The weaknesses were all in a panoramic view. Apart from using brute force, the easiest way to break a restriction formation was to find its weaknesses and flaws. First, set a small target. For example, 1 second. Remember, Book Dweller. Chapter 2051. No matter how powerful a restriction array was, there would be flaws. However, these flaws were hard to find. However, Long Wuxian now had the Sky Dragon Eye, so he could clearly see the flaws in most of the restrictive array formations with a casual glance. Brat, do you think that you can stop me with this restriction array? You're underestimating me. You're not afraid of this little trick of yours. Long Wuxian sneered as he looked at the Dragon Lord token with greed in his eyes. This Dragon Lord token is mine. The moment he spoke, countless spiritual energies suddenly shot out from Long Wuxian's palms. These spiritual energies were divided into 9 streams, and each stream was aimed at a specific spot in the array. The target of each stream of spiritual energy was a flaw in the array. If all 9 flaws were hit at the same time, the array would collapse and fall apart. However, as soon as the 9 streams of spiritual energy were unleashed, the array formation protecting the Dragon Master token underwent a sudden change. The ancient characters on the array formation started to change all of a sudden. The change and reorganization happened in an instant. The array had completely changed its appearance. It was completely different from before. Bang, 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 bang. When the 9 streams of spiritual energy entered the formation, they were unable to shake it at all. Instead, a dragon's roar was suddenly heard from the array. This dragon's roar resounded through the heavens and earth, causing everyone to be shocked. They felt as if they had lost their minds. Long Wuxian was the first to be affected. The moment the dragon's roar rang out, Long Wuxian's body suddenly stopped in the air. He swayed a few times, and a large mouthful of blood essence spurted out from his mouth. Then, Long Wuxian turned back into his human form and fell down. Young master! A figure flew over. The old man hurriedly caught Long Wuxian, preventing him from falling to the ground in a sorry state. However, Long Wuxian's face was now pale. He had even spurted out a large mouthful of blood essence. Clearly, he was badly injured by the dragon's roar. "There's a trick in this array. Brat, how dare you trick me?" Long Wuxian swallowed a few divine elixirs in succession. Only then did his injuries recover slightly. Then, he looked straight at Chu Fengmian with boundless killing intent in his eyes. The sudden change in the formation was obviously because of Chu Fengmian. The sudden change in the formation caught him completely off guard. He tried to forcefully break the formation, but he ended up being injured instead. I've already reminded you that those who are not qualified do not have the right to obtain the Dragon Master token. Instead, they will only be asking for trouble. Chu Fengmian sat on the throne and said disapprovingly, "Brat, there's no need to talk nonsense with me here. You dare to scheme against me. It seems that you don't want to live anymore. I originally wanted to give the Blue Dragon sect a way out, but it seems that you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Die." Long Wuxian recovered from his injuries. His eyes fell on Chu Fengmian, and boundless killing intent was revealed between his eyebrows. Suddenly, he took a step forward and arrived in front of Chu Fengmian. His right hand immediately turned into a dragon claw and slapped toward Chu Fengmian. Now that Long Wuxian had opened his Tianlong eye, he could clearly see that Chu Fengmian was indeed a half-step celestial being martial artist. It would be difficult for Long Wuxian to break the formation in a short period of time. He was also worried that there might be other changes in the formation. If the formation backfired again, even he would not be able to bear it. In comparison, it was easier to kill Chu Fengmian. With his strength, killing a half-step celestial being was as easy as crushing an ant. What's more, Chu Fengmian's attitude had already aroused his killing intent. He had originally wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. This time, he just acted in advance. Rumble. Long Wuxian's dragon claw contained endless dragon power. It swept out with the power of the fifth move of the ancestor. Obviously, he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian in one blow. "Be careful, Dragon Lord," Yin Longxian and the people of Blue Dragon sect warned in alarm. They had witnessed Long Wuxian's tyrannical strength. He was definitely more powerful than an ordinary celestial being expert. The dragon claw blasted directly in the direction of the throne. There was not much space in the hall, so there was almost no space to dodge the dragon claw. There was nowhere to retreat. However, Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed deep disdain when he looked at this dragon claw. He did not stand up and continued to lay on the throne. All he did was to lazily lift his hand and suddenly point a finger. Bang! The finger seemed ordinary, but it contained the most profound mysteries of the Dragon Clan's martial skills. Apart from Ancestor Tianlong, no one could comprehend the Dragon Clan's martial skills better than Chu Fengmian, who had integrated the Genesis Qi and controlled the dragon origin. Long Wuxian's fifth move of the ancestor was indeed extremely powerful in the eyes of ordinary people. However, in Chu Fengmian's eyes it was full of loopholes. Chu Fengmian's finger clashed with the dragon claw in the air. Countless spiritual energies burst out and the dragon claw exploded. The dragon claw simply couldn't withstand the might of Chu Fengmian's finger in this confrontation of power and immediately exploded. Long Wuxian cried out in pain. This dragon claw was formed from his right hand. Now that it was destroyed, it was equivalent to his entire right hand being destroyed. Get lost. Chu Fengmian glanced at Long Wuxian. With a flick of his finger, Long Wuxian's body was sent flying and fell to the ground. Long Wuxian's right hand was shattered and blood flowed out. Long Wuxian's current appearance was incomparably miserable. This scene caused everyone present to be unable to believe their own eyes. They were unable to believe the scene that they were seeing right now. One finger! He exploded with one finger? This Long Wuxian is so weak? He exploded with one finger? How is it possible? Long Wuxian is much more powerful than the experts who have just stepped into the celestial realm. How could he be destroyed with one finger? Countless Blue Dragon Sect's supreme elders exchanged glances with each other, as though they were trying to confirm if what they saw was real. Even with their strength, they were starting to doubt what they had seen. Previously, these supreme elders of the Blue Dragon Sect had fought with Long Wuxian. They were all defeated by Long Wuxian with one move. Even Yin Longxian couldn't take advantage of Long Wuxian and was severely injured. In their view, although Long Wuxian was only in the half-step celestial realm, his true strength was definitely a celestial realm expert who had passed the celestial tribulation. But such a Long Wuxian was destroyed with one finger? First, set a small target such as 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 2052. For the Supreme Elders of Blue Dragon Sect, Long Wuxian was an existence that they would never be able to challenge in their lifetime. But now, Long Wuxian couldn't even withstand a single blow from Chu Fengmian. How strong was Chu Fengmian? Although the Supreme Elders of Blue Dragon Sect had discussed Chu Fengmian's strength, they guessed that Chu Fengmian's strength was around the celestial realm, which was equal to the Mad Dragon Emperor. After all, Chu Fengmian's realm was only a half-step celestial realm. To be able to possess the strength of a celestial realm expert while being a half-step celestial realm expert was already an incomparably heaven-defying genius. Such a genius might not be born in the entire Blue Dragon star field for tens of thousands of years. As for the highest estimate, they thought that Chu Fengmian and Long Wuxian's strength were on par. But now, the gap between Long Wuxian and Chu Fengmian's strength was like heaven and earth. Long Wuxian couldn't withstand a single blow. None of them could imagine what level Chu Fengmian's current strength had reached. Lord Dragon Lord! Lord Dragon Lord! The Blue Dragon Sect's supreme elders shouted excitedly. Since the arrival of Long Wuxian and the old man 3 days ago, the entire Blue Dragon Sect had been humiliated. Now they had finally turned the tables. Humph! But at this moment, a cold snort was heard. This cold snort made all the excited voices stop abruptly. Everyone felt a murderous intent brewing. You lowly dragons, how dare you injure young master? Impudent! All of you combined are not even as precious as a single hair on young master's body. How dare you injure young master? Heinous crimes! Heinous crimes! The old man who was supporting Long Wuxian walked out. A tyrannical aura erupted from his body as he stared at Chu Fengmian and spoke at the same time. Young master, how should we deal with these bastards? Kill! South Dragon Emperor, kill all of them! Long Wuxian shouted angrily. Boundless murderous intent had already occupied his mind. He had never thought that he would suffer such a great loss after coming to a small place like the Azure Dragon Star area from the nation of 10,000 dragons. Today, if he didn't wash the Blue Dragon Sect with blood, it would be difficult to vent the hatred in his heart. Moreover, the main culprit was Chu Fengmian. He had to skin Chu Fengmian and pull out his tendons to vent his hatred. Yes, the old man, the South Dragon Emperor, took a step forward upon receiving the order. Boundless power burst out from his body. His whole body swelled up, and dragon scales emerged from his skin. He looked like a half-human half-dragon in the eyes of the South Dragon Emperor. He's actually a dragonborn? Chu Fengmian glanced over and muttered to himself. He could tell that the South Dragon Emperor's current appearance was not a disguise, he had used some sort of secret technique. Instead, it was his actual appearance. Dragonborn, the child of a human and a dragon. The South Dragon Emperor had half of the bloodline of the ancient Tianlong. However, he was a dragonborn, a mixed blood. His status in the nation of 10,000 dragons was naturally incomparable to a pure-blood dragon. Therefore, even though the South Dragon Emperor was stronger than Long Wuxian, he was willing to be a servant. However, his strength was unquestionable. His strength was even stronger than many pure-blood dragon emperors. South Dragon Emperor. He's the genius from the border dragon star area 100,000 years ago? Suddenly, a great elder of the Blue Dragon sect exclaimed as he recognized the South Dragon Emperor. It's him! It's a dragonborn, it's really him. He went to the nation of 10,000 dragons and is willing to be a servant. This South Dragon Emperor, he had already passed the heavenly tribulation and stepped into the heavenly realm 100,000 years ago. How strong is he now? Many exclaimed. Many of them had heard the name South Dragon Emperor before. Their faces were filled with fear. He was a genius who had stepped into the heavenly realm 100,000 years ago. After 100,000 years of accumulation, the South Dragon Emperor's strength was even stronger than before. Now that you know my name, you should know what's going on. Today you've offended the young master, which is a capital offense. If you all kill yourselves now, I'll let you all have a quick death. Otherwise, it won't be easy to die in my hands. The South Dragon Emperor glanced at the crowd and said coldly. His words made everyone tremble as if it was the end of the world. An old dog, you don't have much strength, but you sure have a big mouth. Chu Fengmian sat on the throne and changed his posture slightly. He stretched and sat down, looking at the South Dragon Emperor and said, "Just do it if you want. Don't waste your breath. You'll be a dead man soon anyway." Chu Fengmian looked at the South Dragon Emperor indifferently as if he was looking at a dead man. Such blatant contempt caused the South Dragon Emperor to reveal a furious expression. "Junior, you're courting death." Boom! Boundless fury erupted as the South Dragon Emperor uttered those words. At the same time, the South Dragon Emperor's power erupted from his palm. Boundless dragon force erupted from his palm. Streams of dragon force intertwined in the air, forming a giant dragon claw that slammed down at Chu Fengmian. The power of the dragon claw was more profound than the fifth form of the primogenitor that Long Wuxian had executed. The sixth form of the primogenitor. It's the sixth form of the primogenitor. Oh my God! The sixth form of the primogenitor. The supreme elders of the Blue Dragon sect were utterly shocked. They could barely execute the third form of the primogenitor, but the South Dragon Emperor had already executed the sixth form of the primogenitor. The dragon claw slammed down and landed on Chu Fengmian's throne. No matter where Chu Fengmian ran, he couldn't escape from the grasp of the dragon claw. The overflowing power shattered many of the restrictions in the hall. Yin Longxian and the various supreme elders had to borrow the power of the hall in order to withstand the aftershock. Chu Fengmian was still sitting on the throne in the center of the power. He didn't even have the intention to get up. He raised his head and looked at the dragon claw with disdain. The sixth form of the primogenitor? If your old ancestor knows that you've comprehended the sixth form of the primogenitor to such a state, he'll definitely cripple you. How shameful! Chu Fengmian sat on the throne and raised his head. His body seemed to have grown several times taller. Even though Chu Fengmian's body didn't seem to have changed, the aura on his body was completely different from before. It was 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times stronger. Watch carefully. This is the sixth form of the primogenitor. Let's set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 2053. Chu Fengmian's hand was like a claw as he made a grabbing motion in the air. Suddenly, a gigantic figure appeared in the sky. Following that, an earth-shattering dragon's roar resounded. This dragon's roar would make any dragon tribe member feel like submitting to it. This was because this dragon's roar came from primogenitor Tianlong. Chu Fengmian's grabbing motion contained the dragon source. The phantoms of the first ancestor heavenly dragon also appeared and attacked together with monstrous might. Heavens, what's that? Primogenitor's silhouette? Dragon source? What is this? Looking at the silhouette of primogenitor Tianlong in the sky, he mumbled to himself. It was said that if one comprehended the dragon tribe's martial skills to the pinnacle, they would be able to summon primogenitor Tianlong's silhouette. This was also the pinnacle of the dragon tribe's martial skills. Only by using the pinnacle of the dragon tribe's martial skills would one be able to summon primogenitor Tianlong's silhouette. However, reaching the pinnacle of the dragon tribe's martial skills was easier said than done. None of the Blue Dragon sect's supreme elders had ever used a dragon tribe's martial skills to the pinnacle of the dragon tribe's martial skills to summon primogenitor Tianlong's silhouette. Moreover, Chu Fengmian wasn't using a simple dragon lord's martial skills, but the 9 moves of the primogenitor. All the dragon tribe's martial skills in the world were derived from the 9 moves of the primogenitor. Because the 9 moves of the primogenitor were too mysterious and difficult to use, countless dragon tribes' martial skills were taken from the 9 moves of the primogenitor to reduce the difficulty. Being able to use the 6th move of the primogenitor was unimaginable for the Blue Dragon sect's supreme elders. However, the appearance of the primogenitor's silhouette meant that Chu Fengmian's martial skills had reached the pinnacle of the primogenitor's martial skills. Although they were both using the 6th move of the primogenitor's martial skills, Chu Fengmian's Dragon Claw was many times stronger than the South Dragon Emperor's. This was the pinnacle of the primogenitor's martial skills. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, the South Dragon Emperor had barely managed to use the 6th form of the primogenitor. In terms of power, it wasn't even close to the beginner level of the 6th form of the primogenitor. Chu Fengmian primogenitor's martial skills were at the pinnacle of the primogenitor's martial skills. Boom! The Dragon Fengmian Dragon's Dragon Claw shattered the primogenitor's martial skills. Dragons martial dragons. What is this? Primogenitor primogenitor's martial? God? Martials. The South Dragon Emperor roared. He couldn't believe that Chu Fengmian primogenitor's martial skills could reach the pinnacle of the primogenitor's martial skills. The South Dragon Emperor used to be a famous genius. He even joined the country of 10,000 dragons. Being able to use the martial skills of the primogenitor's martial skills as a peak immortal warrior was already an incredible feat. That was why he was so confident. However, all of his confidence was mercilessly shattered in front of Chu Fengmian. He barely used the martial skills of the primogenitor's martial skills, while Chu Fengmian primogenitor's martial skills were at the pinnacle of the primogenitor's martial skills. Rumble! The power exploded. Endless power bombarded the South Dragon Emperor. I don't believe that a mere half-step celestial being is my match. As the South Dragon Emperor roared, he gathered a huge amount of dragon force and launched thousands of Dragon Clan martial skills at Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was only a half-step celestial being. The South Dragon Emperor could see it clearly. No matter how profound Chu Fengmian's Dragon Clan martial skills were, the difference in power was still there. The power of each of the hundreds and thousands of dragon martial skills was equivalent to a full-powered attack from the South Dragon Emperor. Even an immortal general would have to back off when facing the combined power of the dragon martial skills. A mere half-step celestial being? Ridiculous. You think you're stronger than me? Today, I'll let you know that an old man like you is nothing. You're just an ant. Chu Fengmian sneered again and again. Facing the bombardment of thousands of Dragon Clan's martial skills, Chu Fengmian laughed out loud. Suddenly, endless dragon power erupted from Chu Fengmian's back. Waves of dragon power rushed into the sky and condensed into 5 dragon claws above Chu Fengmian's head. Each of the dragon claws contained the power of the 9 moves of the primogenitor. Die! Boom! Following Chu Fengmian's order, the 5 dragon claws and the 6th move of the primogenitor swept down at the same time. These 6 dragon claws contained the power of the first 6 moves of the primogenitor. Violent and boundless energy poured down in torrents. It was unstoppable and its speed was extremely fast. Bang, bang, bang. The thousands of dragon race martial skills that the South Dragon Emperor had unleashed were all destroyed in an instant without being able to put up any resistance. Buzz. The South Dragon's body trembled, and the defensive spiritual energy around him was shattered. What happened next was something that no one could believe. 6 dragon claws descended from the sky. Before anyone could react, the South Dragon Emperor's body was blasted to death by the 6 dragon claws and exploded in the air. There was only a cloud of blood mist in the sky. The cloud of blood mist was still trying to escape. However, Chu Fengmian moved his palm and grabbed the cloud of blood mist with his spiritual energy. No matter how the South Dragon Emperor struggled, he couldn't escape from Chu Fengmian's palm. Everything happened too quickly. Even now, many of the Blue Dragon sect's Supreme Elders had yet to react. In the eyes of these Supreme Elders, this was an earth-shattering battle. However, they had never imagined that it would end so quickly. Furthermore, this result was something that no one could have imagined. The powerful South Dragon Emperor was destroyed in the sky and fell into Chu Fengmian's hands. He didn't even have the strength to struggle. On the other side, Chu Fengmian sat on his throne. From the start to the end, Chu Fengmian did not stand up. He only waved his hand, and the South Dragon was mercilessly destroyed. Seeing Chu Fengmian sitting on the throne, the Blue Dragon sect's Supreme Elders were stunned. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. Chapter 2054. The South Dragon Emperor was a famous expert. When they were still weak, the South Dragon Emperor was already an expert who had passed the Deva tribulation. When the South Dragon Emperor unleashed his full strength, his aura alone was enough to make the Blue Dragon sect's Supreme Elders shiver. They didn't dare to go against the South Dragon Emperor at all. But now, Chu Fengmian just sat on the throne and killed the South Dragon Emperor with a wave of his hand. How could they not be shocked? The Dragon Lord is invincible! 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 No one knew who started to shout, but soon, countless Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect followed suit. On the other side, the young master of the dragon race, Long Wuxian, was also stunned by this scene. He was nearly scared to death. He knew very well that the South Dragon Emperor was a peak immortal warrior. A peak immortal warrior wasn't even a match for Chu Fengmian. He was easily killed by Chu Fengmian. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Chu Fengmian. Especially when he saw Chu Fengmian looking at him, the South Dragon Emperor took a few steps back. Who are you? Genius? Impossible. No matter how powerful a genius is, there's no one like you in our country of 10,000 dragons. Long Wuxian stared at Chu Fengmian and said with a trembling voice. If Chu Fengmian was an immortal general or even an immortal marquis, Long Wuxian wouldn't be so shocked. Although there weren't many immortal generals and immortal marquis in the country of 10,000 dragons, he had seen a few of them before. If it was an immortal general or an immortal marquis, they could definitely kill the South Dragon Emperor with a single move. But now, Chu Fengmian was only at the half-step celestial being realm. Long Wuxian felt that he was already invincible among those at the half-step celestial being realm. Being able to contend with an immortal realm expert at the half-step celestial being realm was already an incomparably dazzling genius. However, this so-called genius was not worth mentioning in front of Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was able to kill the South Dragon Emperor with a single move as a half-step celestial being. This was something that not even immortal generals could accomplish. Didn't this mean that Chu Fengmian's strength had surpassed immortal generals? How could a half-step celestial realm expert be so powerful? Long Wuxian couldn't believe it. However, Chu Fengmian was still holding the South Dragon Emperor's blood mist in his hand, and the South Dragon Emperor was screaming in agony. He had no choice but to believe it. Release the South Dragon Emperor, and we'll leave right away. Today's matter will be written off. From now on, we'll mind our own business. How about that? Long Wuxian looked at Chu Fengmian, immortal marquis. Leave it at that? Leaves alone? That's a good idea. However, you dared to cause trouble in the Blue Dragon sect and injured so many of our people. Do you think you can leave just like that? Before Chu Fengmian could speak, Yin Longxian stood up and said coldly. Her eyes were extremely cold. Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor had come to the Blue Dragon sect to show off their strength and injure many people. How could it be good for them to write off their grudges just like that? That's right. We must give them an explanation. We can't let them leave like this. The other Blue Dragon sect supreme elders chimed in as well. The Blue Dragon sect ruled the Blue Dragon star field and had never suffered such humiliation. They definitely wouldn't let Long Wuxian leave like this. What? What do you mean by this? Do you still want us to stay? Aren't you afraid of the country of 10,000 dragons' revenge? Long Wuxian's expression changed and his tone became sharp. I just don't want to fall out with you. The country of 10,000 dragons has countless experts. If anything happens to us today, the Blue Dragon sect will also be trampled by the country of 10,000 dragons. Country of 10,000 dragons. Many of the Blue Dragon sect's supreme elders fell silent after hearing Long Wuxian's words. Indeed, Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor didn't only represent the two of them. Behind them was the mysterious country of 10,000 dragons. Although they were still unsure of the origin of the new country of 10,000 dragons, the South Dragon Emperor had joined the country of 10,000 dragons willingly as a servant. The country of 10,000 dragons definitely had someone whose strength surpassed the South Dragon Emperor. If they killed Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor today, the country of 10,000 dragons would definitely seek revenge. However, they were unwilling to let the two of them leave unscathed. Let the South Dragon Emperor go. Long Wuxian felt more confident after seeing the silent crowd. He stared at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, Your strength is indeed impressive. However, it's nothing before the country of 10,000 dragons. Let them go at once. Otherwise, the country of 10,000 dragons will seek revenge from you. Country of 10,000 dragons? It doesn't matter where you're from today. You dare to cause trouble in the Blue Dragon sect and want to leave unscathed? That's not going to happen. Chu Fengmian, who was sitting on the throne, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Long Wuxian. Since you're here, there's no need to leave. Stay. Although Chu Fengmian's tone was calm, he didn't conceal the killing intent in his words. How dare you? My country of 10,000 dragons. Before Long Wuxian could finish his threat, he suddenly heard a miserable shriek. A black hole suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's palm. The black hole devoured the South Dragon Emperor's essence blood. Only the South Dragon Emperor's miserable shriek could be heard from the black hole. His consciousness was completely obliterated. The South Dragon Emperor died in Chu Fengmian's hands just like that. Jiuyu. Long Wuxian didn't expect Chu Fengmian to ignore the threat of the country of 10,000 dragons and kill the South Dragon Emperor. His heart was filled with rage. However, when he looked at Chu Fengmian, he couldn't say a word. His expression changed. All right. I admit defeat today. After Long Wuxian finished his sentence, he turned around and wanted to leave the hall. However, the moment he turned around and left the hall, the surrounding space was suddenly sealed by an invisible force. At the same time, a cold voice resounded. I said, since you're here, don't even think about leaving. You stay here as well. Moreover, I also want to know exactly what this so-called 10,000 dragons country is. Chu Fengmian looked at Long Wuxian coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He waved his hand and a spiritual energy turned into an invisible hand that grabbed at Long Wuxian. End of chapter. Chapter 2055. Long Wuxian's origin wasn't small. Since they had already shed all pretenses of cordiality, there was no reason to let him leave alive. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was extremely curious about the so-called country of 10,000 dragons. Chu Fengmian wanted to strip Long Wuxian's memories to see the origin of the country of 10,000 dragons. This spiritual energy transformed into an invisible giant hand. It traversed countless spaces and directly grabbed towards Long Wuxian. You dare to kill me? You dare to kill me? I am the grandson of Tianlong Emperor, one of the princes of the country of 10,000 dragons. You dare to kill me? You will die too. My grandfather will avenge me. Long Wuxian shouted as he gathered his spiritual power to resist Chu Fengmian's invisible hand. However, before Long Wuxian's spiritual power could finish condensing, the huge hand made of spiritual power swept over and shattered it. Long Wuxian was unable to resist much before he was caught in Chu Fengmian's palm. Although Long Wuxian was an immortal realm powerhouse, he was nothing in front of Chu Fengmian. Thus, Chu Fengmian caught him in his palm. Die! Chu Fengmian grabbed Long Wuxian in front of him and didn't say anything. He blasted Long Wuxian's body with spiritual power. With a bang, Long Wuxian's body exploded. Within the blood mist, a golden light flew out. It was Long Wuxian's memories. Long Wuxian's memories had been stripped away. His essence blood was devoured by the sky-devouring secret technique and turned into pure spiritual power that was integrated into Chu Fengmian's body. Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor were killed by Chu Fengmian one after the other. So that's how it is. Chu Fengmian had a certain understanding of the country of 10,000 dragons after reading Long Wuxian's memories. Long Wuxian's position in the country of 10,000 dragons wasn't considered low. Therefore, he knew quite a lot about the country of 10,000 dragons. The country of 10,000 dragons was actually a force that originated from Lihan Heaven. It was a force that was established by some tyrannical dragon tribes that had escaped from the ancient country of 10,000 dragons. The country of 10,000 dragons was established in an extremely ancient era. When the country of 10,000 dragons created by ancestor Tianlong was destroyed, the new country of 10,000 dragons inherited its name and was established. However, the country of 10,000 dragons had always been extremely low-key, so not many people knew about it. In the recent hundreds of thousands of years, the country of 10,000 dragons began to enter the world and wantonly recruited the experts of the dragon clan. The South Dragon Emperor was recruited in such a way. Now in the new 10,000 Dragon Kingdom, there were many treasures from the ancient 10,000 Dragon Kingdom, especially the 9 moves of the primogenitor, which had a complete record. It was the best place for all dragons to cultivate. Because of this, many tyrannical dragon clans had joined the country of 10,000 dragons. In the Lihan Heaven, the myriad dragon country was an overlord force, and no one dared to provoke them. There were as many experts as there were clouds in the sky. The strongest expert Long Wuxian had ever seen was a 5th-level 9th Order immortal, a profound heaven realm expert, and an immortal king realm expert. Moreover, this wasn't the strongest expert of the country of 10,000 dragons. According to Long Wuxian's memories, the true overlords of the country of 10,000 dragons were old antiques that had lived for millions or even tens of millions of years. They had experienced the era of the country of 10,000 dragons. Such people's strength was unfathomable. The lifespan of the dragon clan was longer than that of humans. Ordinary dragon clan members could live for hundreds of thousands of years. Some of the tyrannical and ancient dragon clan members could live for tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of years. Because of this, no one dared to provoke the dragon clan. This Dragon Lord token represents the supreme status of the ancient Azure Dragon clan. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also knew the origin of the Dragon Lord token. In the ancient country of 10,000 dragons, there were a total of 9 ancient dragon clans. The Ancient Battle Dragon, Ancient Tianlong, Ancient Divine Dragon, Ancient Golden Dragon, Ancient True Dragon, Ancient Nether Dragon, Ancient Azure Dragon, Ancient Hornless Dragon, and Ancient Hidden Dragon were the 9 great dragon clans. Among them, the patriarchs of the 9 great dragon clans were known as the 9 great supremes of the dragon clan. The Dragon Lord token was the proof of the patriarch, which was also the proof of the 9 great supremes of the dragon clan. Chu Fengmian didn't know much about the Dragon Lord token before, so he thought that it was only related to the Blue Dragon sect. But now, it seemed that the Dragon Lord token represented the patriarch of the Blue Dragon sect, the position of the 9 great supremes of the Dragon clan. The 9 great supremes of the Dragon clan had always been the pinnacle figures of the Dragon clan. With the Dragon Lord token in hand, they ruled over the entire Dragon clan. All the Dragon clan members under the Ancient Azure Dragon should follow the order and obey Chu Fengmian's command. It was no wonder that Long Wuxian dared to rush over as soon as he heard that the Dragon Lord token was in the Blue Dragon sect. Once he obtained the Dragon Lord token, he would have the chance to become one of the 9 great supremes of the Dragon clan. The 9 great supremes of the Dragon clan weren't just a title. They were also related to some ancient inheritance and secret treasures. For example, there were many secret treasures left behind by the 10,000 Dragons country, but only the 9 great supremes could open them. Therefore, the 10,000 Dragons country had always been searching for the Dragon Lord token. Out of the 9 Dragon Lord tokens, the 10,000 Dragons country had already obtained 7 of them. As for the remaining 2, one of them had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. I didn't expect that I would become the supremes of the Blue Dragon clan. Chu Fengmian chuckled. It was no wonder that no one could truly control the Dragon Lord token in the Blue Dragon sect. The position of Dragon Lord represented the entire ancient Blue Dragon clan. Even the Mad Dragon Emperor didn't dare to represent this identity. However, after realizing that Chu Fengmian was an existence that had passed through a heaven-defying tribulation, the Mad Dragon Emperor didn't hesitate to give the Dragon Lord token to Chu Fengmian. It was no wonder that Yu Wuhan's attitude towards Chu Fengmian changed so much after seeing the Dragon Lord token in Chu Fengmian's hand. It seemed like he had some understanding of the Dragon Lord token. It's indeed a good item, but it's also a hot potato, Chu Fengmian said with a smile. The Dragon Lord token represented the identity of the 9 great supremes of the Dragon clan. It could rule over an entire clan. It was definitely a good item. However, the Dragon Lord token was also a hot potato. It wasn't something that anyone could take. Although the Dragon Lord token represented the identity of the 9 great supremes of the Dragon clan, it still depended on one's strength to become one of the 9 great supremes. For example, although Chu Fengmian possessed the Dragon Lord token, if Chu Fengmian were to head to the 10,000 Dragons country and declare that he wanted to become the supremes of the ancient Blue Dragon clan, no one would support Chu Fengmian. Instead, they would think of ways to kill Chu Fengmian and seize the Dragon Lord token for themselves. No matter how high a position was, one must possess strength worthy of it. Only then would one be qualified to sit on it. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2056. Therefore, Mad Dragon Emperor gave Chu Fengmian the Dragon Lord token, which gave Chu Fengmian a difficult problem. If Chu Fengmian gave up the Dragon Lord token now, it would save him a lot of trouble. However, he wouldn't be able to enjoy the benefits of the Dragon Lord token. Long Wuxian only knew a small part of the true function of the Dragon Lord token. He only knew that the Dragon Lord token represented the status of one of the 9 great sovereigns of the Dragon clan. After all, although Long Wuxian's status wasn't low, it was far from the level of the 9 great sovereigns. He only knew a lot of things from hearsay. Since the Dragon Lord token could be used as the status symbol of one of the 9 great sovereigns, there must be a bigger secret behind it. Forget it, there's no need to think about it. I can't casually reveal the Dragon Lord token in the future. Long Wuxian only heard about the Blue Dragon sect by chance, and he didn't tell anyone. The Thousand Dragon Country shouldn't notice me for the time being, Chu Fengmian said in a low voice. However, this time, the 9 domains had undergone a drastic change. The 9 domains of the heavens were about to appear in the world. It was indeed an earth-shattering event. The experts of the country of 10,000 dragons usually stayed in the country of 10,000 dragons to cultivate in seclusion. However, this time, many experts of the country of 10,000 dragons had already come out of seclusion and headed to the 9 domains. The 3 saint domains all had their eyes on the 9 domains. This made Chu Fengmian even more nervous. This was just the beginning. When Tianzhu regions arrived, it would be the time of the real big change. In this chaotic world, only strength is enough to stand firm. Chu Fengmian's mind was very clear. In this chaotic world, bloodline, identity, origin, and background were all useless. Strength was the foundation of everything. After settling the matter of the Blue Dragon sect, it was time for Chu Fengmian to head back to the 9 domains. Thank you, Dragon Lord, for saving the Blue Dragon sect. Yin Longxian walked over and said gratefully to Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian didn't appear this time, they wouldn't be able to do anything to Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor. This time, Chu Fengmian had indeed saved the Blue Dragon sect. Yin Longxian also knew that Chu Fengmian's Dragon Lord position was given to him by the Mad Dragon Emperor. Chu Fengmian didn't have much to do with the Blue Dragon sect. She had only met him once, so she didn't dare to send a message to Chu Fengmian when Long Wuxian came. Since I'm the Dragon Lord, it's my duty, Chu Fengmian said casually. As for you, just call me young master like before. Yes, young master, Yin Longxian said respectfully. She stood at the side and said happily. Chu Fengmian's words proved that he was willing to take the Dragon Lord's position. This was definitely a great thing for the Blue Dragon sect. In her opinion, Chu Fengmian's current strength was simply unfathomable. With Chu Fengmian as their backer, the Blue Dragon sect would be much safer. However, Yin Longxian's complexion was still somewhat weak. She had been severely injured in the fight with Long Wuxian and had yet to recover. This divine elixir can help you heal. Chu Fengmian glanced at Yin Longxian and pointed his palm. A divine elixir flew out. This is an ancient divine elixir? Yin Longxian took the divine elixir and was immediately attracted by it. On the divine elixir, there were elixir veins and incomparably pure medicinal efficacy, indicating that this was an ancient divine elixir. Even though Yin Longxian was the sect master of the Blue Dragon sect, she couldn't take out an ancient divine elixir to heal her injuries. This is too precious. Take it, Chu Fengmian said with a smile as he looked at Yin Longxian looking at the divine elixir. An ancient divine elixir was nothing to Chu Fengmian now. He had obtained 10,000 divine elixir pills from the palace in the sacrificial lake. There were thousands of ancient divine elixir pills. Taking out one was indeed nothing. Hearing this, Yin Longxian no longer hesitated and took the ancient divine elixir. The power of the ancient sacred elixir was effective even for celestial realm experts. Yin Longxian was only a half-step celestial realm expert. Such an ancient sacred elixir would be of great help to her recovery from her injuries. In a few breaths, Yin Longxian's complexion had improved a lot, and her aura had almost recovered. You've entered the half-step celestial realm so quickly. Your aptitude is really good. With your aptitude, if you accumulate some experience in the half-step celestial realm, your strength may not be inferior to Long Wuxian. Chu Fengmian glanced at Yin Longxian and said. Yin Longxian was the most powerful 9 Tribulation ancient emperor that Chu Fengmian had seen so far. Although she had just stepped into the half-step celestial being realm, her strength was no weaker than most half-step celestial being realm experts. Of course, there was still a gap between her strength and Long Wuxian's. However, this gap was mainly because Yin Longxian had just stepped into the half-step celestial being realm. With her talent, if she had accumulated some experience in the half-step celestial being realm, and also stepped into the peak of the half-step celestial being realm, she would not be defeated even if she could not win against Long Wuxian. It's all thanks to you, young master. Otherwise, it would have taken me some time to enter the half-step celestial realm. Yin Longxian said gratefully. It was also because she got the rising dragon elixir condensed by the power of ancestor Tianlong from Chu Fengmian that she could enter the half-step celestial realm so smoothly. It's just a deal. I said that if you tell me the news, I'll give you the rising dragon elixir. Chu Fengmian said casually. It was a fair deal. Chu Fengmian would not ask for favors for nothing. That's because you're generous, young master. Yin Longxian said with emotion. Previously, when Chu Fengmian had healed the Mad Dragon Emperor's injuries, even the Mad Dragon Emperor had chosen to recognize Chu Fengmian as his master. Naturally, she was no exception. At this time, whether Chu Fengmian gave the rising dragon pellet or not depended on Chu Fengmian. If he did not give it to her at that time, Yin Longxian could not resist, but Chu Fengmian still gave it to her. Now that the matter of the Blue Dragon sect has been resolved, I'm ready to leave. Can the interstellar transmission array still work? Chu Fengmian did not continue and went straight to the point. He returned to the Blue Dragon star region to use the interstellar transmission array to return to the Yenluo star region and then to the 9 regions. The interstellar transmission array is still working. I'll arrange for someone to go and operate the array. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Yin Longxian hurriedly threw out a jade talisman and asked her sex people to operate the interstellar transmission array. Young master, you've just arrived. Are you leaving so soon? Yin Longxian said after hesitating for a moment. Chu Fengmian had just arrived at the Blue Dragon sect, and he was leaving so soon. I have to go, Chu Fengmian said. End of chapter. Chapter 2057. Chu Fengmian could also stay in the Blue Dragon sect and rest for a few days. However, after discovering that Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor were here, Chu Fengmian became even more nervous. Apart from the country of 10,000 dragons, who knew how many ancient and powerful forces were hidden in the 3 sacred realms. If these forces appeared one by one for the 9 domains, then the situation of the 9 domains would be even more chaotic than what Chu Fengmian had estimated. It would be extremely dangerous for the Sword Dao sect to stay in the 9 domains. Chu Fengmian had to hurry back to the Sword Dao sect to take charge of the situation. In that case, I won't keep you any longer, Yin Longxian said. Master seems to have gone to the 9 domains. Are you planning to go there too? That's right. Chu Fengmian nodded. I'm from the 9 domains. I've come to the Songhai Star region to take care of some matters. I'll return to the 9 domains once I'm done. You're from the 9 domains? Yin Longxian said in surprise after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. Chu Fengmian's origin had always been mysterious. She didn't know about Chu Fengmian's background, but she didn't expect him to be from the 9 domains. Following the drastic changes in the 9 domains, one of the 4 saint domains that had been silent for a long time, had spread across countless star domains. Yin Longxian had also heard about it in the Azure Dragon star region, but she didn't expect Chu Fengmian to be from the 9 domains. The legends of the 9 domains had a long history. According to the ancient records, the 9 domains used to be even stronger than the 3 saint domains. The strength of the 3 great sacred realms had reached an unimaginable level. In front of the 3 great sacred realms, a second-class starfield like the Songhai starfield was extremely weak. The prosperity of the 9 regions had reached an unimaginable level. Even Chu Fengmian himself had no idea how prosperous the 9 regions had been back then. I've established a force in the 9 domains called the Sword Dao sect. If you're in trouble, you can bring people to the 9 domains to find me. Chu Fengmian turned back and told Yin Longxian before he left. Although the arrival of Long Wuxian and the South Dragon Emperor was an accident, there might be people from the 10,000 Dragon Country coming in the future. Chu Fengmian's words could be considered as giving the Blue Dragon sect another trump card. After explaining everything, Chu Fengmian didn't continue to stay in the Blue Dragon sect. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and turned into a beam of light. He left the Blue Dragon sect and flew in the direction of Huan Dragon City. Whoosh! Streaks of light flew out of the Blue Dragon sect beside Chu Fengmian. These streaks of light were Yin Longxian and the Blue Dragon sect's Grand Elders. These Grand Elders had come with Chu Fengmian to see him off. Chu Fengmian chuckled when he saw this. His flight light arrived above Huan Dragon City before gradually descending. Someone disregarded the rules and directly flew into Huan Long City? Many martial artists and Yao gods in Huan Long City raised their heads and looked curiously at the streak of light that suddenly flew into Huan Long City. According to the rules, martial artists and Yao gods weren't allowed to fly in Huan Long City. All martial artists and Yao gods had to land in front of Huan Long City's city gate and enter the city. Huan Long City was a city under the control of the Blue Dragon sect. No one dared to disregard the rules of the Blue Dragon sect. Swaggering into the city like this made people very curious. However, more streaks of light soon descended from the sky. There were more than a dozen streaks of light like this. Every streak of light emitted a powerful and boundless energy, causing the martial practitioners and Yao gods in Huan Long City to be shocked. These people's auras aren't any weaker than the Huan Long City Lord. Who are they? A martial artist said in disbelief after taking a glance. The Huan Long City Lord was a half-step celestial realm expert. However, the strength of these streaks of light wasn't any weaker than the Huan Long City Lord. Didn't this mean that there were more than a dozen half-step celestial realm experts? In a place like Huan Long City, it was rare to see a half-step celestial realm expert. However, there were so many of them this time. What's going on? Is something big going to happen? Many martial artists and Yao gods on the street were discussing spiritedly. They didn't know what was going on. However, there were some sharp-eyed people who had already recognized the identities of these people. These are the Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect. Why are the Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect here in Huan Long City? Some martial artists and Yao gods didn't even have time to react when they saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. These Supreme Elders came to the Palace of the Galaxy Transmission Array in Huan Long City and lined up neatly in 2 rows. They lowered their heads respectfully as if they were welcoming someone. A young man walked past the Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect indifferently and entered the palace. Who is this young man? This scene had already exceeded the imagination of many martial artists and Yao gods. In their eyes, these Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect were all supreme existences. They were already supreme figures, but now these supreme characters in their eyes were actually so respectful to this young man, bowing so respectfully. Even the sect master of the Blue Dragon sect wasn't qualified to receive such respect. Moreover, the sect master of the Blue Dragon sect, Yin Longxian, was also among the crowd. He was also bowing respectfully. After the young man left for a few minutes, the experts of the Blue Dragon sect left one after another. However, the martial artists and Yao gods of the entire Huan Long City were still immersed in the shock of what had just happened. For a moment, the identity of this young man became a mystery that people took delight in discussing. In the palace, needless to say, this young man was naturally Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian hadn't expected that these Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect would send him off in such a grand manner. However, these Supreme Elders of the Blue Dragon sect were so respectful because they had already acknowledged Chu Fengmian's identity as the Dragon Lord. Yanluo Starfield. Chu Fengmian entered the palace and saw the familiar star chart. From it, Chu Fengmian quickly found the direction to the Yanluo Starfield. He took out 8 divine-grade spirit stones from his hand. Every time the Galaxy Transmission Array was activated, it would consume 8 divine-grade spirit stones. Chu Fengmian had already known this when he came over from the Yanluo starfield. Chu Fengmian chose the direction of the Yanluo starfield and inserted the 8 divine-grade spirit stones into the slot. Immediately, the galaxy transmission array began to operate and Chu Fengmian disappeared from the palace. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, guest residence. Chapter 2058. The Azure Dragon starfield was extremely far away from the Yanluo starfield, separated by dozens of starfields. Even Chu Fengmian would need dozens of days to fly across the stars. However, the spatial passageway created by the teleportation portal would allow one to instantly reach the Yama domain. This was the second time Chu Fengmian had experienced such a thing, but he still couldn't fully comprehend it. Chu Fengmian had integrated Ancestor Tianlong's claw into his mastery of the Tao of space. Even the Celestial Realm, Immortal Warrior, and Immortal General Realm experts couldn't compare to Chu Fengmian in the Tao of space, let alone martial artists and demon immortals of the same realm. The person who set up the Starfield Transportation Formation was definitely thousands of times stronger than Chu Fengmian. However, the Starfield Transportation Formation was set up in ancient times. So many prosperous and large starfields, such as the Shanghai Starfield, didn't have a direct Starfield Transportation Formation. To reach the Shanghai Starfield, one must first go through the Starfield Transportation Formation to the Azure Dragon Starfield, and then travel across the stars. It was said that the 9 domains used to have more than one Starfield Transportation Formation. But later, for various reasons, these Starfield Transportation Formations were broken, and the 9 domains were sealed. Recently, the 9 domains had undergone drastic changes, and countless treasures had appeared, attracting experts from countless starfields to the 9 domains. The Yanluo starfield was the closest to the 9 domains to have a Starfield Transportation Formation, so it was the first to be affected greatly. Chu Fengmian had just left the Starfield Transportation Formation when several figures from other starfields were transported over. The weakest of these figures through the Starfield Transportation Formation were martial artists and demon immortals with the strength of Emperor Gu. As for the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu and even half-step Celestial Realm martial artists and demon immortals, although they couldn't be seen everywhere, they were still common. The Starfield Transportation Formation was expensive, and it required 8 divine-grade spirit stones to activate. In addition, the interstellar teleportation formations of the various stellar domains were controlled by the various factions. If one wanted to use the interstellar teleportation formation, they would have to pay a fee. At least a dozen divine-grade spirit stones were needed to use the interstellar teleportation formation once. Martial artists and demon immortals below Emperor Gu would not be able to produce such wealth unless they had a powerful background. Even Emperor Gu felt the pinch of such a fortune. However, they were willing to spend such a fortune to come to the 9 zones for the sake of the countless rumored treasures in the 9 zones. Now that the Chun clan has taken control of the Yama domain, they must have made a fortune. Chu Fengmian thought in his heart. The last time he came to Yanluo Starfield, he took action and wiped out the 3 great families of Yanluo Starfield. Now only the Chun family was left. They should be the true master of Yanluo Starfield. With the Chun family controlling the Starfield teleportation array, they should be able to make a huge profit. Chu Fengmian thought as he walked out of the palace. This Starfield teleportation formation was the most important thing in a starfield. It was heavily guarded. The guards in charge of guarding it were all Emperor Gu. Even some powerful guards were Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations. Chu Fengmian walked outside and looked at the guards. He couldn't help but frown. These people were not from the Chun clan. Before Chu Fengmian could continue his observation, the 2 guards saw Chu Fengmian walking out of the palace. They immediately walked over to Chu Fengmian and spoke. "Stop! Which star field are you from?" In order to avoid trouble, Chu Fengmian maintained his realm at the level of Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations. Such a realm was considered a figure, but it was not eye-catching, especially in a place close to the Nine Zones. A Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu was nothing. After all, experts from hundreds of star fields were gathered in the Nine Zones. There were many half-step Celestial Realm and Celestial Realm experts in the Nine Zones. Yanluo Starfield was the only way to the Nine Zones. It was also filled with experts. The two guards sized Chu Fengmian up and saw that his strength was average. They spoke in an arrogant tone as if they were interrogating Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was a little unhappy, but he didn't act out. He also felt that during the time he was away, not only the Nine Domains, but even the Yanluo Starfield had undergone earth-shaking changes. Chu Fengmian also wanted to find out what had happened in the Nine Realms and the Yama Starfield during his absence. My name is Chu Fengmian, and I come from the Azure Dragon sect of the Azure Dragon Starfield. May I know what has happened in the Yanluo Starfield? As Chu Fengmian spoke, he calmly took out a few divine-grade spirit stones and handed them over. The last time I came to the Yanluo Starfield, it was not like this. Divine-grade spirit stones. Seeing the quality of the spirit stones Chu Fengmian handed over, the two guards smiled and hurriedly took them. For Emperor Gu liked them, divine-grade spirit stones were rare treasures. After taking the spirit stones, the two guards' attitude towards Chu Fengmian immediately changed. They answered Chu Fengmian's question. Now, the Yanluo Starfield is under the control of our 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance. All the demon gods who want to enter the Nine Zones from the Yanluo Starfield must be demon gods of the 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance. Demon gods of other starfields are not qualified to enter. One of the guards looked at Chu Fengmian and said, Azure Dragon Starfield is not in the 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance, so you are not qualified to enter the Nine Zones. 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance? I didn't expect such a force to emerge in such a short time and control the Yanluo Starfield. It seems that the Chen family can't defend the Yanluo Starfield. But it's normal. Now that so many experts have gathered, a small Chen family with only 2 half-step Celestial Realm experts will certainly not be able to defend the Yanluo Starfield. Chu Fengmian thought to himself after listening to the two guards' words. The 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance sounded like a new force. It should be an alliance of various starfields. Moreover, this force was so powerful that it had completely controlled the Yanluo Starfield. As for the former master of the Yanluo Starfield, the Chen family, they must have been chased away by others. Judging from their words, the 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance controlled the Yanluo Starfield and did not allow the demon gods of other starfields to enter the Nine Zones. They seemed to have the intention of occupying the Nine Zones. Is there no way to enter the Nine Zones? Chu Fengmian calmly took out a few more divine-grade spirit stones. The two guards quickly took them and looked at each other with greed in their eyes. First, set a small target. For example, 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 2059. The two guards looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a fat sheep. Since Chu Fengmian could take out divine-grade spiritual stones so easily, he must have a huge fortune on him. The two guards glanced at each other. One of the guards said, For the sake of these spiritual stones, I can remind you that although you're not a demon god of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance, it's not difficult for you to enter the 9 domains if you pay a price. When the guard looked at Chu Fengmian, there was greed in his eyes. Cunning and scheming flashed in his eyes. What is it? Chu Fengmian's expression did not change. He acted as if he did not see the greed in the two guards' eyes and said casually. Hearing Chu Fengmian speak in such a manner, the greed in the eyes of the two guards grew even more intense. There was even killing intent in their eyes. They wanted to kill Chu Fengmian and take all of his wealth for themselves. However, there were many warriors and demon immortals around the palace where the Star Domain teleportation array was located. Although the two of them were guards of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance, they did not dare to make a move on such a large scale. "All right, we won't make things difficult for you. As long as you can take out a few thousand divine-grade spiritual stones, we're willing to help you walk around and count you as one of the 100 Extremes Alliance's demon gods. This way, you can go to the 9 domains." One of the guards suppressed the killing intent in his heart and stared at Chu Fengmian like a venomous snake that could devour its prey at any time. "You should be able to afford this price. A few thousand divine-grade spiritual stones." Chu Fengmian sneered in his heart. These two guards really saw him as a fat sheep. They asked for a few thousand divine-grade spiritual stones. A few thousand divine-grade spiritual stones were nothing to Chu Fengmian. He had the divine vein and could continuously condense divine-grade spiritual stones. However, this did not mean that Chu Fengmian would be easily extorted. If he could go to the 9 domains by paying a few dozen divine-grade spiritual stones, Chu Fengmian would not waste his time. However, the two guards had their eyes on Chu Fengmian and were demanding an exorbitant price. "What? You don't want to take it out?" According to the rules, anyone who isn't a martial artist or demon immortal of the 100 Ultimate Star Region Alliance isn't allowed to step into the Yama Star Region. If you don't leave, you'll be locked up in the heavenly prison. Hearing Chu Fengmian's somewhat unwilling answer, a guard's expression immediately changed and said coldly, "And you have a huge amount of wealth on you. I suspect that your wealth came from a shady source. Come with us and we'll talk about it later." Another guard stared at Chu Fengmian and shouted coldly. He waved his hand and the surrounding guards immediately walked over and surrounded Chu Fengmian. One of the guards whispered to the other guards. The rest of the guards also looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a fat sheep. "What is the meaning of this?" Chu Fengmian looked at the guards who surrounded him with a cold gaze. These imps were hard to deal with. The strength of these guards could only be considered below average among the elites of the various major star domains. However, they were now using the banner of the 100 Devastation Star Domain Alliance to extort and blackmail all the martial artists and fey immortals who wanted to enter the 9 regions. This time, it was Chu Fengmian's turn to be blackmailed. "Nothing. We suspect that your wealth came from a shady source. A few days ago, a treasure vault of our 100 Ultimate Star Region Alliance was robbed and a large number of divine-grade spiritual stones were stolen. We suspect that you're the culprit. Come with us." One of the guards sneered. He suddenly gathered his spiritual energy and was ready to attack. The other guards sneered as they looked at Chu Fengmian. "Don't struggle. If you dare to resist us, you'll be resisting the 100 Ultimate Star Region Alliance. Kid, we've given you a chance. If you don't even want to pay a few thousand divine-grade spiritual stones, then don't blame us." The other guards looked at him ferociously and were ready to attack at any time. "Looks like it's not going to end well today." Chu Fengmian looked at the attitude of the guards around him, and a murderous intent appeared in his heart. What's going on? Just when Chu Fengmian was about to attack and kill, an old voice suddenly sounded. Hearing this voice, Chu Fengmian suppressed the murderous intent in his heart. At the same time, he looked not far away and saw an old man walking over. This old man was an expert who was at the peak of the half-step celestial realm. Such a person would already be considered an overlord in a grade 3 celestial domain. Protector Lu. The guards surrounding Chu Fengmian all saluted the old man respectfully when they saw him. "What's the commotion here? What's the matter?" The old man, Protector Lu, looked at one of the guards and coldly said as he arrived, "It's like this." That guard walked to Protector Lu's side and whispered a few words. After he finished speaking, Protector Lu's face revealed traces of anger as he said, "Trash. You trash. How dare you extort and blackmail us? The reputation of our 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance has been ruined by trash like you. Get lost. If you dare to let me see you in the future, I won't spare you." "Yes, Protector Lu. The other guards hurriedly left when they saw that Protector Lu was angry. Friend, what happened just now is due to the incompetence of our 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance. Please don't take it to heart. Protector Lu looked at Chu Fengmian and said politely. Although our 100 Extreme Star Regions Alliance doesn't allow outsiders to enter the 9 regions, our 100 Extreme Star Regions Alliance welcomes experts from various star regions to join us. If you want to go to the 9 regions, why don't you join our 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance? Join the 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he thought for a while and nodded his head. Alright. Chu Fengmian originally wanted to know the situation of the 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance. Since there was a chance to join, Chu Fengmian would take advantage of it. Alright. After joining the 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance, we'll be fellow disciples. When you go to the 9 regions in the future, we can do the same for each other. As Protector Lu spoke, he waved his hand and tore open a spatial passage. Please come in. This is the headquarters of the 100 Extremes Star Regions Alliance. Behind the spatial passage was an incomparably huge palace. The palace was so big that it could accommodate millions of people. It was so complicated that it was like a small world. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2060. Chu Fengmian could tell at a glance that this small world must have been created by several experts working together in the depths of the void. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he could already create a small world from the depths of the void. Of course, it was impossible for him to create such a big small world. With Chu Fengmian's strength, he could only maintain a space that was big enough for cultivation. In this small world, Chu Fengmian could feel the strength of more than 1 or 2 martial artist demon gods. There were at least dozens of them working together to create such a small world from the depths of the void as the headquarters of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. After observing for a while, Chu Fengmian followed Protector Lu into the palace. At a glance, he saw countless martial artists and demon immortals moving about the palace. These martial artists and demon immortals were all stronger than the ancient emperor. Without Emperor Gu's strength, one was not qualified to join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Moreover, these martial artist demon gods came from different races. Chu Fengmian had never seen many of them before, so he could not tell them apart. However, all the martial artist demon gods had a jade talisman on their chest with the words 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance carved on it. This indicated that they were members of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Our 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance is an alliance formed by hundreds of 3rd grade and 4th grade star domains. Therefore, there are martial artist demon gods from each star domain. Protector Lu led Chu Fengmian into the palace while explaining the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance to Chu Fengmian. Generally speaking, the highest level in the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance is the old ancestor of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. However, the old ancestor rarely appears in the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Under the old ancestor, there are the elders, and then there are the protectors. Generally, the elders have to be invincible in the half-step celestial being realm, and only the protectors are qualified to be the best in the half-step celestial being realm, Yi Futian said. At this point, Protector Lu's tone was filled with pride. Please take care of me in the future, Protector Lu. Chu Fengmian understood and took out a small lump of divine grade spirit stones. There were about 100 of them and handed them to Protector Lu. Sure. Protector Lu took the divine grade spirit stone and smiled. He continued to tell Chu Fengmian about the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. After listening to Protector Lu's description, Chu Fengmian roughly understood what kind of power this 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance was. Compared to the other star regions, the 9 regions were not big. In fact, they were too small. However, within these small 9 regions, there were treasures that far surpassed the treasures of the hundreds of star regions outside. It could be said that there were treasures everywhere. The opening of the ruins of End was only the beginning of the 9 zones' upheaval. Next, the myriad treasure heaven, the Northern Sea Palace, the Dragon Palace, the Starnet Palace, the House of Storms, and so on and so forth, which were renowned throughout the 9 regions, had all been opened, and the treasures that had emerged were a dazzling array. More and more warriors and fey immortals poured into the 9 zones, and the battles between them became more and more intense. All the warriors and fey immortals who came to the 9 zones were here for the treasures. To them, there was no difference whether it was going to some treasure trove to look for treasures or directly killing and robbing. In this battle, some warriors from the stronger star regions had the upper hand. When they joined forces, some warriors from the smaller star regions could not contend with them at all. Because of this, the 100 Ultimate Star Regions Alliance had been established. It had united hundreds of 3rd grade and 4th grade star regions to form a powerful force. Although these rank 3 and rank 4 star regions were not considered strong individually, they were still an extremely powerful force when they joined forces. The 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance had already become one of the strongest forces in the 9 zones, and it could contend with many powerful rank 2 star regions. According to the rules, the warriors and fey immortals who joined the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance had to hand over 30% of the treasures they obtained. Although this point was harsh, it still did not stop a large number of warriors and fey immortals from joining the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. The 9 zones were now filled with experts and dangers. Joining the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance could be considered as having the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance as a backer, and it could reduce the number of people who wanted to kill and rob. There were many warriors and fey immortals joining the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance at all times. Chu Fengmian came to the palace and saw hundreds of warriors and fey immortals at a glance. They were all here to join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. As long as they were from rank 3 and rank 4 star regions, as long as their strength had reached the level of Emperor Gu, they could join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Now that the 9 zones have been divided up by the various star regions, I wonder how the Sword Dao sect is doing? Chu Fengmian thought to himself. He had not gone to the 9 zones yet, so he was not clear about the specific changes in the 9 zones. However, even a force like the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance had appeared. The current situation in the 9 zones was definitely worse than before Chu Fengmian left. After Chu Fengmian joined the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance, he would be able to return to the 9 zones. The less people knew about Chu Fengmian being a native of the 9 zones, the better. With the identity of a member of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance, Chu Fengmian's identity could be concealed. It would be more convenient for Chu Fengmian to move around in the future. We're here. Protector Lu brought Chu Fengmian to a room in the palace. The warriors and fey immortals in the room had already lined up in a long line. There were at least a few thousand of them. These people were all here to join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. So many people? Chu Fengmian was shocked. There were thousands of Emperor Gu here. Although one Emperor Gu was nothing in Chu Fengmian's eyes, the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance had thousands of Emperor Gu joining in a single day. It was indeed a little frightening. This is not considered a lot. The news of the reappearance of the 9 zones is spreading far and wide. Many warriors and fey immortals from hundreds and thousands of star regions have rushed here. The number of people coming will only increase. The 9 zones used to be saint zones. Who wouldn't want to get their hands on the countless treasures here? Protector Lu said. He did not care about the people in the line and directly brought Chu Fengmian to the depths of the room. Who's that? Disregarding the rules and not lining up? Guards, someone is disobeying the rules. Why can they not line up? Disregarding the rules? Some warriors and Fey immortals in the long line couldn't help but complain when they saw Protector Lu bringing Chu Fengmian into the room. End of chapter. Chapter 2061. What are you shouting for? A few guards who were in charge of maintaining order glanced at Protector Lu. Their eyes were filled with respect as they spoke coldly to the few martial artists and demonic deities who were complaining. This is the protector of our 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. What are you shouting for? If you don't want to join, then scram. Upon hearing this, the complaining voices in the long queue immediately disappeared. They had worked so hard and queued up so that they could join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. None of them wanted to lose this opportunity because of some complaint. One should know that these martial artists and demonic deities, who came from rank 3 and rank 4 star domains, would be in great danger if they went to the 9 domains alone. They would be killed within a few days. Joining the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance and relying on the alliance was their only choice. Because of this, there was still an endless stream of martial artists and demonic deities who were willing to join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance, even though they had to hand over 30% of the treasures they obtained after joining the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Chu Fengmian smiled casually when he heard the commotion outside. With his current strength, he could easily become an overlord or an old ancestor if he joined the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. However, Chu Fengmian did not have such thoughts. He only joined the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance to conceal his identity. If he became an overlord or an old ancestor, he would only attract attention. He would rather be an ordinary disciple. Chu Fengmian followed Protector Lu to a room. There were a few disciples of the 100 Ultimate Star Field Alliance in the room. They were making jade talismans and carving their names and auras into the jade talismans. That would be considered as joining the 100 Ultimate Star Field Alliance. Protector Lu is here. The few martial artists who were crafting the jade talismans said respectfully when they saw Protector Lu. A protector had a much higher status than them. Moreover, the status of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance had always been determined by one's strength. The higher one's status, the stronger one would be and the more respected one would be. This is a friend who has come to join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Give him a jade talisman. Protector Lu said indifferently. Yes. 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance disciple hastily took out a jade talisman and handed it to Chu Fengmian. Carve your name here, and insert your aura into it to activate the jade talisman. Chu Fengmian took the jade talisman, engraved his name, and injected his aura into it. Immediately, Chu Fengmian's aura began to emanate from the jade talisman, and the words 100 Absolutes appeared. This also meant that Chu Fengmian had officially joined the 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance. Alright, from now on, you are also a member of the 100 Extremes Star Region Alliance. Guardian Lu looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a smile. Many thanks to Protector Lu. Chu Fengmian said. There's no need to thank me. Actually, it was my young master who wanted you to join the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance. My young master wishes to meet you. Protector Lu suddenly whispered. Come with me. When you meet the young master, there will be benefits for you. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. However, he did not reject the offer and followed Protector Lu into the depths of the palace. The young master mentioned by Protector Lu is targeting me? No wonder Protector Lu is so polite to me and asked me to join the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance. Chu Fengmian followed Protector Lu all the way into the depths of the palace. Suddenly, he wondered why this young master would target Chu Fengmian. In order to keep a low profile, Chu Fengmian only displayed the strength of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Such strength would be considered as an expert in some third-grade starfields. However, this place was close to the 9 regions. Not to mention the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, There were even many half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon immortals. A Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu was naturally not worthy of this young master's attention. In addition to strength, there was also wealth. Seems like it's me. I took out a divine grade spirit stone right from the start. Who would have thought that I would be targeted by some people? Chu Fengmian felt a little helpless. The worst spiritual stone he had was the divine grade spirit stone. He did not expect that he would be targeted by others when he took out the divine grade spirit stone. This young master should be a big shot in the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance since he can order a protector. It might be troublesome to meet him. It's better to leave now, Chu Fengmian suddenly thought as he followed behind Protector Lu. Although this place was the headquarters of the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance, and there were layers of restrictions and formations, if Chu Fengmian used his full strength to leave, these restrictions and formations would not be able to stop Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian left and returned to the 9 regions, these people of the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance would definitely not be able to stop Chu Fengmian. This is Supreme Sword Qi? This is the power of Supreme Sword Qi? Just when Chu Fengmian was about to leave the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance to avoid trouble, he suddenly felt a familiar power in his heart. It was the power of Supreme Sword Qi. In Chu Fengmian's body, the 1,800 Supreme Sword Qi all sensed the existence of the same kind and instantly woke up in excitement. 3,000 Supreme Sword Qi had the ability to attract each other. In the headquarters of the 100 Ultimate Starfields Alliance, there was actually the existence of Supreme Sword Qi. This Supreme Sword Qi seems to be in the deepest part of the palace? Chu Fengmian opened his spiritual consciousness and probed the place little by little. He felt the aura of the Supreme Sword Qi and found that it was in the deepest part of the palace. The outer perimeter of the palace was where some ordinary disciples of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance lived, rested, and chatted. The deeper into the palace was where some of the protectors, elders, and even old ancestors of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance lived. When Chu Fengmian first came to the palace, he did not feel the aura of the Supreme Sword Qi. Now that he followed Protector Lu all the way to the deepest part of the palace, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt the existence of the Supreme Sword Qi. The Supreme Sword Qi was one of the most precious treasures of the Sword Tao. Every Supreme Sword Qi contained countless ancient and mysterious sword technique. Even Chu Fengmian had never seen the swordsmanship recorded in the Supreme Sword Qi. By integrating the swordsmanship recorded in the Supreme Sword Qi into the 9 regions' swordsmanship, Chu Fengmian's strength would increase further. Moreover, the Supreme Sword Qi itself was a precious treasure. One Supreme Sword Qi might not be a big deal, but if dozens of Supreme Sword Qi were to be combined, the power that it could unleash would be much more powerful than a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. It was even rumored that if the 3,000 Supreme Sword Qi could be combined, the power that it could unleash would be more powerful than a real immortal artifact. The Supreme Sword formation formed by the 3,000 Supreme Sword Qi was the #1 killing formation in the world. Its power was unparalleled in the world. End of chapter. Chapter 2062. The Shang Sword Sect, the oldest sword sect, was the first sect to obtain the Supreme Sword Qi. At that time, the Shang Sword Sect's mountain protecting array was a Supreme Sword formation formed by 3,000 Supreme Sword Qi. It was said that the power of the Supreme Sword formation was enough to kill an immortal emperor. Although Chu Fengmian wasn't sure if the rumor was true or false, he had personally experienced the profoundness of the Supreme Sword Qi. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian had 1,800 strands of Supreme Sword Qi in his hands. The power of the Supreme Sword Qi would increase tremendously with each additional Supreme Sword Qi. Chu Fengmian could feel the Supreme Sword Qi in the depths of the palace from such a distance. This meant that the number of Supreme Sword Qi in the depths of the palace was not small. However, Chu Fengmian was not worried. He now had 1,800 supreme sword qi. Even if the remaining 1,200 supreme sword qi were all obtained by one person, Chu Fengmian could still suppress him. Let's go. Young master is waiting inside. Protector Lu led them to a door in the depths of the palace and said. Not far from the door was the deepest part of the palace. At a glance, nothing could be seen in the deepest part of the palace. It was a void. This is the place where the old ancestors of our 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance cultivate. Unless you're summoned by the old ancestors, you're not allowed to enter. Trespassing is a capital offense. Protector Lu looked at Chu Fengmian's eyes and reminded him. Yes. Chu Fengmian nodded. His spiritual consciousness had already entered the depths of the void. He could feel the tyrannical auras in the depths of the void. Chu Fengmian could clearly feel that in the depths of the void there was a boundless aura. Many of these auras were not weaker than Chu Fengmian. Almost every one of them had the strength of a celestial being. Chu Fengmian could feel the auras of immortals, immortal knights, immortal generals, and even those who had surpassed the immortal generals and stepped into the profound heaven realm. Of course, these auras were extremely rare. Chu Fengmian could only sense 2 of them. The number of celestial realm experts added up to more than 100. There are actually so many? Chu Fengmian was a little shocked. The 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance was only a rank 3 star domain. Although they had a lot of people, they shouldn't have many experts. Unexpectedly, there were more than 100 experts above the celestial realm. However, Chu Fengmian quickly understood. Although the 100 Ultimate Star Domain Alliance was an alliance of 3rd grade and 4th grade star domains, the number of powerhouses in each star domain wasn't high. For example, in some 3rd grade star regions there were only 1 or 2 celestial realm powerhouses. However, there were hundreds of star regions that formed the alliance of top 100 star regions. Even if there was 1 celestial realm expert in 3 or 4 star regions, it would still be a terrifying number. That supreme sword qi is in this void. I wonder which ancestor of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance controls it? Chu Fengmian approached the void and could clearly feel that the supreme sword qi was in the depths of the void and was controlled by one of the ancestors of the celestial realm. Chu Fengmian didn't know which ancestor it was. He didn't dare to explore the situation in the void. After all, there were more than 100 celestial realm experts. Chu Fengmian didn't want to act rashly and alert the enemy. He just explored the situation for a while and then withdrew his spiritual consciousness. He followed Protector Lu and walked into the palace. Stepping into the palace, he could see a tall throne at a glance. A young man was sitting on the throne. The young man's strength had reached the peak of the half-step celestial realm. There was a faint confidence on his face, as if everything in the world was in the palm of his hand. The young man was dressed in a noble dragon robe. At a glance, it could be seen that he was definitely a person of high status and noble status. This person's strength is not bad, but his realm is unstable. His strength seems to have been forcibly enhanced by some kind of treasure. Chu Fengmian's heart skipped a beat. He could see that although the young man was at the peak of the half-step celestial realm, his strength was only a little stronger than some ordinary half-step celestial realm experts. In terms of strength, he was not as good as Protector Lu. The young man's realm was also forcibly enhanced by some kind of treasure. However, his realm was unstable, so his real strength was not as good as Protector Lu's realm. Such a person was worthy of Protector Lu's respect and was called Young Master. Obviously, he was a second-generation ancestor. This is Prince Xia. He is an elder of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. His father is a celestial realm ancestor. Protector Lu walked into the secret chamber and said to Chu Fengmian, "Chu Fengmian, come and greet Prince Xia." "Greetings, Prince Xia," Chu Fengmian said. "Protector Lu, is this the person you were talking about?" A little Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations doesn't seem to have much ability. Prince Xia looked at Chu Fengmian and said lazily. Chu Fengmian, right? You have a lot of divine-grade spirit stones on you? As expected, you are here for the divine-grade spirit stones. Prince Xia said without hiding anything. Chu Fengmian was immediately sure why Prince Xia was targeting him. However, at this time, Chu Fengmian still wanted to get the 1,200 Supreme Sword Qi. It was not the time to fall out with Prince Xia, so Chu Fengmian said calmly. I got some by luck. Hand over all those divine-grade spiritual stones. I've been refining a type of pill recently, so I need a batch of divine-grade spiritual stones. Since you have them on you, I won't waste my time looking for them. Prince Xia looked at Chu Fengmian and said directly. This? Chu Fengmian was a little stunned. He didn't expect Prince Xia to ask for Chu Fengmian's spirit stones without hiding anything. Generally speaking, even if the experts of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance had their eyes on Chu Fengmian and wanted the divine-grade spirit stones on him, they should use some means to get Chu Fengmian to hand them over. Yet, this young Master Xia directly asked for it. He did not even mention the benefits. Protector Lu laughed bitterly. He knew that young Master Xia had taken a fancy to Chu Fengmian's spirit stones. However, he never expected that young Master Xia would ask for them in such a blatant manner. It was as if he was robbing them. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 2063. Chu Fengmian, Prince Xia is a noble figure. Since he took your spirit stones, he will definitely give you some benefits in the future. Moreover, it's because of Prince Xia that you were able to join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Taking out some spirit stones will be beneficial to your future. Protector Lu helplessly said to Chu Fengmian. This, all right. Chu Fengmian's face showed hesitation. After a long time, he opened his mouth and said. A divine-grade spirit stone suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's palm. A divine-grade spirit stone was only the size of a thumb. Now there were more than 10,000 divine-grade spirit stones. Chu Fengmian purposely put on a pained expression when he took out the divine-grade spirit stone. Give it to me. Looking at the pile of divine-grade spirit stones, young Master Xia's eyes were filled with greed. He couldn't wait any longer. With a wave of his hand, the pile of divine-grade spirit stones flew into his hands. After taking a closer look at it, he burst out laughing. Good, good. Kid, you can go now. After taking the divine-grade spirit stone, Prince Xia directly waved his hand at Chu Fengmian. He didn't mention the reward at all. This, Prince Xia, where is my reward? Chu Fengmian stood up and looked at Prince Xia and said. Reward? What reward? Brat, you've just served this young master and you want a reward? It's your honor to serve me. You can join the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance because of me. Do you understand? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Prince Xia's face turned cold and he reprimanded. You have to go to the 9 domains and find more treasures. Only then will you be rewarded. Do you understand? Now get out of here. Damn it. Chu Fengmian's heart was filled with killing intent. He couldn't wait to kill Prince Xia. However, on the surface, Chu Fengmian didn't bat an eyelid. It was as if he was afraid of Prince Xia's identity. After revealing a trace of resentment in his eyes, Chu Fengmian didn't hesitate to turn around and leave the room. This Prince Xia is so arrogant that he dares to steal my spirit stones. I will find a chance to kill him sooner or later, but now is not the time. I need to get closer to him and see who has the supreme sword Qi. Chu Fengmian walked out of the palace and flew towards the 9 domains. He wanted to return to the 9 domains first. Chu Fengmian had already engraved a brand in the divine-grade spirit stones he gave to Prince Xia. This brand had already entered Prince Xia's body. Every move of Prince Xia was now under Chu Fengmian's control. Prince Xia's status in the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance was very high. He had more opportunities to meet the celestial realm ancestors of the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance. There were more than 100 celestial realm experts in the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance. Even Chu Fengmian couldn't rashly barge in. Now, Chu Fengmian had to confirm the target. He had to determine which ancestor had obtained the supreme sword qi. At that time, Chu Fengmian could find an opportunity to take action and obtain the supreme sword qi in one fell swoop. Now that Chu Fengmian had left a restriction on Prince Xia's body, he could leave the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance and go to the 9 domains to do his own thing. At the same time, if Prince Xia met the ancestor who had obtained the supreme sword qi, Chu Fengmian would know who it was. Now that Chu Fengmian had become a member of the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance, his journey to the 9 domains would be smooth. No one would stop Chu Fengmian. Back in the room, young Master Xia was still sitting on the throne, counting the divine-grade spiritual stones in his hands with a smile on his face. Protector Lu, who was standing beside him, smiled bitterly when he saw this scene. Young Master Xia, you have a lot of divine-grade spiritual stones. Young Master, you were too rash just now. That kid will definitely hate you. What? He's just an ant from the 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu. If he hates me, then so be it. How could a piece of trash like him dare to go against me? Prince Xia said disapprovingly. With his status, he didn't even care about the protectors and elders of the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance. After all, his father was one of the celestial realm ancestors of the Hundred Extremes Star Domain Alliance. As the son of a celestial, his status was extraordinary. As for Chu Fengmian, he was only at the level of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. He didn't care about him at all. No, that kid is definitely not qualified to go against you, Protector Lu said. But that kid has so many divine-grade spirit stones on him. He must have obtained some treasure or even some treasure from the 9 domains. I don't think it's his first time in the 9 domains. He must have obtained some treasure from the 9 domains before. That's why he has so many divine-grade spirit stones. These divine-grade spirit stones are nothing compared to the 9 domains treasure. If you can subdue him, then it'll be a great harvest. 9 domains treasure? Are you telling the truth? That kid really has the 9 domains treasure? When Mr. Xia heard the words 9 regions treasure trove, his eyes burned with even more greed. Beneath this greed, there was even a murderous intent. Why didn't you say so earlier? If you did, I would have killed that kid. Only I am qualified to have the 9 domains treasure. Those trash don't deserve it. Reporting to you, young master. There are rules in the Alliance of Hundred Extremes. We can't kill each other. Although young master has a noble status, it's not good to break the rules openly. You'll definitely be punished. It's not worth it to punish you just to deal with a kid. Protector Lu rolled his eyes and said, that kid will definitely go to the 9 domains. It's not good for us to take action in the Alliance of Hundred Extremes. But once he's in the 9 domains, no one will know that we killed him even if he dies. As long as we can kill him, all the opportunities that the kid has obtained will belong to young master. Protector Lu, you're right. My father also warned me to keep a low profile. Prince Xia's eyes flashed with greed. I'll leave this matter to you. Follow that kid to the 9 domains. Find an opportunity to kill him and bring back his empty ring. Once it's done, you'll be rewarded. Yes, young master. Protector Lu replied and left the room. He then left the palace and headed to the 9 domains. He's still planning to kill me? Chu Fengmian flew across the starry sky towards the 9 domains. In his mind, he heard every word of the conversation between Prince Xia and Protector Lu. First, he set a small target. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2064. Humph, if you dare to come to the 9 regions, I'll make sure you die without a burial place. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly, his eyes filled with incomparable coldness. Chu Fengmian couldn't rashly kill people in the headquarters of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. However, in the 9 domains were so large that it was extremely easy to kill someone without making a sound. Regardless of whether it was Protector Lu or young Master Xia, if anyone dared to come to the 9 domains, Chu Fengmian would definitely kill them. Oh? Prince Xia actually left and went to the void of the headquarters of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance? Chu Fengmian flew all the way to the 9 regions. Suddenly, Prince Xia's figure appeared in his eyes. After receiving a message from a jade talisman, Prince Xia directly went to the void of the headquarters of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. The void was the place where the ancestors of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance cultivated in seclusion. Prince Xia's father was a celestial realm ancestor of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance, so he was very familiar with the void. He flew all the way and soon stepped into a space in the void. This space was layered, forming a space barrier that ordinary people couldn't step into. Obviously, it was a place where a celestial realm expert set up to cultivate in seclusion. Jiuyu is here. As soon as Prince Xia stepped into the space, an incomparably majestic voice came from it. "Father!" Prince Xia replied, and his flying light sped up and flew into the depths of the space. In the deepest part of the space there was a tall palace. In the palace, an old man was sitting on the ground. When Prince Xia saw the old man, he respectfully sat in front of him. This is Prince Xia's father? Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and he concealed the restriction on Prince Xia, making it difficult for the old man in front of him to detect it. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also glanced at the old man. Chu Fengmian actually felt a kind of immortal energy from the old man. The old man in front of him was an immortal general who had condensed immortal energy. No wonder this Prince Xia is so arrogant. Turns out he has some background. Chu Fengmian thought. An immortal general expert was considered a powerhouse even in a grade 2 celestial region. For example, the strongest expert in the vast sea star region, Emperor Jihai, was an immortal general expert. Prince Xia's father was also an immortal general expert. No wonder Prince Xia's status in the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance was so high. Most likely, young Master Xia's father was an absolute tycoon among the upper echelons of the Alliance of 100 Extremes Star Regions. Among the more than 100 celestial realm experts in the Alliance of 100 Extremes Star Regions, there were very few immortal generals. There are only a few immortal generals in the Alliance of the 100 Extremes Star Region. Is this the martial ghost old ancestor? The names of countless tycoons in the Alliance of 100 Extremes Star Regions suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. He had joined the Alliance of 100 Extremes Star Regions, and the Jade Talisman contained a lot of information about the old ancestors of the Alliance of 100 Extremes Star Regions. The one who was closest to Prince Xia's father should be an old man called Martial Ghost Old Ancestor. It was said that this old man was also an immortal general expert with the surname Xia. It was most likely that Prince Xia's father was Martial Ghost Old Ancestor. Martial Ghost Ancestor was the overlord of several rank 3 starfields. He ruled over a rank 3 starfield, and was considered an absolute giant in the 100 Extremes Starfield Alliance. Chu Fengmian could see that Martial Ghost Old Ancestor's strength was no less than Emperor Jihai. Fortunately, the restriction I left behind can deceive immortal generals. The restriction Chu Fengmian had placed on Sir Xia's body was only able to fool immortal generals at best. If he encountered an immortal marquis of the profound heaven realm, they would be able to see through Chu Fengmian's restriction with a single glance. At that time, Chu Fengmian's identity would be exposed. Fortunately, Martial Ghost Old Ancestor did not notice the restriction Chu Fengmian left on Prince Xia's body. Father, why did you call me here this time? Although Prince Xia was extremely arrogant outside, he was incomparably respectful in front of martial ghost old ancestor. Although he was arrogant, he also knew where his status came from. Without his father, who was an immortal general expert, he, a half-step celestial being expert, wouldn't be able to show off his strength in the alliance of 100 extremes star regions. Therefore, he had always been respectful in front of martial ghost old ancestor. There is indeed something. Let's talk about it later. I heard that you have already roped in a lot of disciples in the alliance of 100 extreme star regions? Martial ghost old ancestor slowly said. That's right. I have already roped in a few hundred disciples of the alliance of 100 extremes star regions. However, these people are a bunch of trash. They are useless, Prince Xia coldly said. His tone was somewhat dissatisfied. Enough. There are many treasures in the 9 domains that are not obtained by relying on strength. Most of them depend on opportunities. Although the strength of the disciples of the alliance of 100 extremes star regions is not enough, there are many of them. There will always be a place for them to use their strength. Martial ghost old ancestor slowly said. Father, could it be that you know that the treasures of the 9 domains are about to be opened? Prince Xia's eyes lit up when he heard this. Yes, I have received some news. Martial ghost old ancestor said. Brother Jian is here. Suddenly, a ray of light descended into the palace. Chu Fengmian saw that it was a middle-aged man. His gaze was focused on the sword, and his entire body was emitting a sharp sword intent. He was definitely an expert in the sword Dao. Seeing the arrival of the middle-aged man, Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly widened. He was extremely excited. Chu Fengmian could clearly sense the aura of supreme sword qi from the middle-aged man. Previously, when Chu Fengmian was in the palace of the Alliance of 100 Extreme Star Regions, he sensed the supreme sword qi from the middle-aged man. So many. This person definitely has a large amount of supreme sword qi on him. There are at least 700 to 800 of them. There might even be 1,000 of them. Through the seal on Prince Xia's body, Chu Fengmian could clearly sense the supreme sword might that the middle-aged man contained. Not only did he have supreme sword qi, but the amount of supreme sword qi was also not small. There were a total of 700 to 800 of them. There might even be 1,000 of them. Currently, Chu Fengmian already had 1,800 supreme sword qi in his hand. If he could obtain another 700 supreme sword qi, it would be equivalent to having 2,600 supreme sword qi in his hand. This number was extremely close to 3,000. If so many supreme sword qi were to be combined, the sword formation formed would be powerful enough to kill everything. It would be unstoppable. Chapter 2065. Through the restriction on Prince Xia's body, Chu Fengmian could only judge the amount of supreme sword qi in the middle-aged man's body by his aura. As for how much supreme sword qi there was, Chu Fengmian could only confirm it when he saw the man with his own eyes. However, the only thing he could confirm was that the amount of supreme sword qi in the middle-aged man's body was definitely not small. If there were only a few or dozens of supreme sword qi, it would definitely not have such a powerful supreme sword might. Such amazing sword Dao. This should be Tianxing Jiandi, the overlord of the Holy Sword Star Field, a third-grade star field in the 100 Extremes Star Field Alliance. Chu Fengmian searched through the memories of the experts in the 100 Extremes Star Field Alliance and guessed the middle-aged man's identity. He was Tianxing Jiandi. Tianxing Jiandi was also an expert in the immortal general realm. In the entire 100 Extremes Star Field Alliance, there were only a few immortal generals. According to their characteristics, it was easy to guess. Now, the supreme sword qi was in Tianxing Jiandi's hands. An immortal general is not easy to deal with. Chu Fengmian frowned and thought to himself. If the supreme sword qi was in the hands of an immortal realm, or even an immortal warrior realm demon god, Chu Fengmian could find a chance to kill them. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, it was not difficult to kill an immortal warrior. However, this immortal general realm expert was completely different. An immortal general realm demon god had already transformed his spiritual energy into immortal power. His strength was completely different from that of an immortal warrior. An immortal general realm expert was more terrifying than 10 immortal warriors. Even though Chu Fengmian was now confident that he could kill an immortal warrior, he still did not have much confidence in facing Tianxing Jiendi, an immortal general. Let's listen to what they are talking about first. Chu Fengmian stopped thinking and continued to quietly listen to the conversation between the three people. Now that Chu Fengmian knew that the supreme sword Qi was in Tianxing Jiendi's hands, he would think about how to deal with Tianxing Jiendi. Anyway, Tianxing Jiendi would not leave the 9 regions in a short time. Chu Fengmian still had time to plan. Uncle Tianxing, Prince Xia said respectfully when he saw Tianxing Jiendi arrive. Tianxing Jiendi just nodded. At the same time, he looked at Martial Ghost Old Ancestor and asked him to continue. Brother Jian and I discovered a small world of the 9 regions. This small world has yet to be fully opened. Other than Brother Jian and me, no one else knows about this small world. However, Brother Jian and I have investigated this small world. This small world should be the remains of a sect of the 9 regions. There should be a lot of treasures inside. However, there are also a lot of forbidden formations inside. These forbidden formations are extremely ancient. If we enter rashly, there might be some accident. Ancestor Gui Wu said as he looked at Prince Xia. Don't you have some people under you? Tell them to explore the minor world and help me remove some of the restrictive spells. When it's about time, send me the news. Then we'll go to the minor world and plunder it. This is not a difficult task. Father, don't worry and leave it to me. Prince Xia said with a smile. To him, his subordinates, the disciples of the 100 Extremes Star Field Alliance, were just slaves who would be sent to their deaths. It was not a big deal to send a batch of them to their death. This jade talisman records the location of this small world. Remember, you must not leak this information. Do you understand? Ancestor Gui Wu took out a jade talisman and handed it to Prince Xia. Father, don't worry, Prince Xia said with a greedy smile. After this matter is done, there will be benefits for you. Go. Ancestor Gui Wu said with a smile. Yes. Prince Xia replied and his figure disappeared. He was ready to go to the 9 regions to find that small world. A small world that has never appeared before. This is a great opportunity. In the endless starry sky, Chu Fengmian flew all the way to the 9 regions. In his mind, he was still thinking about the conversation between Ancestor Gui Wu, Tianxing Jiendi, and Prince Xia. Ancestor Gui Wu and Tianxing Jiendi were giants of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance. They were probably famous among the experts of the 9 regions. Therefore, they did not dare to act rashly and alert the enemy. That was why they left this matter to Prince Xia. Although young Master Xia's strength was not strong, he had a great background after all. When he went to the 9 regions, not many people dared to go against him. It was very safe for him to act. However, Chu Fengmian knew about this matter today. Since Chu Fengmian knew about how Prince Xia treated Chu Fengmian before, he would be sorry if he did not give Prince Xia a big gift. When Prince Xia returns to the 9 regions, I'll find an opportunity to kill him and take that jade talisman. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. However, Prince Xia's identity was special. Chu Fengmian did not want to alert the enemy. He would wait until Prince Xia returned to the 9 regions. In any case, Chu Fengmian had left a seal on young Master Xia's body. His every move was under Chu Fengmian's control. Chu Fengmian activated the seal and found that Prince Xia had gathered many disciples of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance and set off for the 9 regions. However, Prince Xia and the others were going to the 9 regions like ordinary martial artists and Yao gods. They were going to take an arc. After all, between the Yenluo star domain and the 9 regions was the extremely dangerous asteroid belt. Ordinary Emperor Gu and half-step celestial realm experts would not dare to cross it. Taking an arc was the safest choice. However, taking an arc would take at least 5 days. After 5 days, Prince Xia would arrive at the 9 regions. Only then could Chu Fengmian make his move. Chu Fengmian had also thought of killing young Master Xia midway. However, there were many disciples of the 100 Extremes Star Domain Alliance on the way. If Chu Fengmian were to kill him midway, it was very likely that his identity would be exposed. Once Chu Fengmian killed Prince Xia, the martial ghost old ancestor would not rest until Chu Fengmian was dead. Prince Xia was the martial ghost old ancestor's only son. If Chu Fengmian killed him, the martial ghost old ancestor would definitely fight Chu Fengmian to the death. Chu Fengmian did not want to fight an immortal general now. He would wait until he reached the 9 regions. Then, Chu Fengmian would have a way to hide his identity. Among the 9 regions there were countless dangerous places. Even the experts of the celestial realm were unable to explore the secrets of these dangerous places. As long as young Master Xia was tricked into a dangerous place, Chu Fengmian would then make his move, and no one would be able to find out. First, he set a small target. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2066. In the shattered star belt in the endless starry sky, arcs were sailing towards the 9 territories from the nearby star field. On each of the arcs were a large number of cultivators and monster gods. The shattered stars belt, which used to be empty, was now bustling with noise and excitement. Some factions had even built cities in the shattered stars belt so that martialists and demonic celestials could rest in peace. In the bustling shattered star belt, a ray of light suddenly streaked across the sky. This streak of light was extremely fast. Ordinary ancient emperors would not even be able to see the existence of this streak of light. Some half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon immortals could barely make out that it was a human figure within the streak of light. However, they couldn't see the appearance of this person clearly. They only knew that this was a peerless master, an existence that they couldn't afford to provoke. This extremely fast ray of light was Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian wanted to return to the 9 territories, so he pushed the speed of his ray of light to the extreme. Even if he rode the ancient centipede, it would take him about 2 days to travel. Now, Chu Fengmian pushed the ray of light to cross the shattered star belt in just 2 hours. Looking from afar, Chu Fengmian could see a continent reflected in his eyes. This continent was shrouded in a dense fog, making it look extremely mysterious. One could even vaguely see the light of fire under the fog. 9-layered heavenly flame. The most mysterious thing about the 9 territories was that the 9-layered heavenly flame was actually in the sky. It was this 9-layered heavenly flame that kept the 9 territories isolated from the outside world. In the past, only heaven realm cultivators could withstand the burning of the 9-layered heavenly flame and enter the 9 territories. However, due to the drastic changes in the 9 territories, the power of the 9-layered heavenly flame had been greatly reduced. Even Emperor Realm cultivators and monster gods could enter the 9 territories with the help of their spirit artifact. Let's go. Chu Fengmian only took a glance at the 9-layered heavenly flame before he moved and rushed down. Even at its peak, the 9-layered heavenly flame couldn't hurt Chu Fengmian now. After passing through the 9-layered heavenly flame, the familiar 9 territories fell into Chu Fengmian's eyes. The 9 territories and the 4 seas were all in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Back to the northern region. Chu Fengmian only glanced at it casually. Then, he concealed himself and flew toward the 9 zones. As soon as he landed in the 9 territories, Chu Fengmian instantly sensed that intense battles were breaking out all around him. Almost all of these battles were between cultivators and monster gods above the Emperor realm. Battles between Emperor Gu and those who were half a step into the celestial realm were not uncommon. The 9 zones have completely become a battlefield. Chu Fengmian sighed when he saw this scene. The 9 domains had changed completely, turning into a battlefield. In order to compete for the countless treasures that had appeared in the 9 regions, numerous battles could erupt at any time. Almost all of the people who had come to the 9 regions were powerhouses from various star domains. Some of the native forces of the 9 regions were unable to resist the invaders. This must be where the Black Heaven sect is located. The place where Chu Fengmian landed should be the southern territory of the 9 regions. At a glance, he saw an incomparable mountain peak in the center of the southern territory. Countless palaces and buildings were built on this mountain peak. It was the location of a large sect. However, this sect had been completely destroyed. Countless palaces and buildings had been damaged, and there were only a few martialists left in them. The Black Heaven sect was once a sect that was close to the 7 great sects and ruled the entire southern territory. But now, the entire Black Heaven sect had been destroyed, and the sect's encampment had been destroyed. Even the remaining disciples of the Black Heaven sect would not be able to do anything. The Black Heaven sect used to be a force that was second only to the 7 great sects in the entire 9 regions. But now, under the catastrophe of the 9 regions, it could not withstand it and its sect was destroyed. If this was the case for the Black Sky sect, then some of the smaller sects in the 9 domains would not be able to resist the martialists and demon immortals from the outside. Unless some peerless powerhouses were born due to the upheavals in the 9 domains, they would not be able to escape the fate of being wiped out. Now, in the entire 9 regions, it could be said that there were less than 1/10 of the sects that had once existed. In the 9 regions, new sects were established one after another. These sects were established by martial artists and demon immortals from other star domains. They established their sects in the 9 regions, as if they wanted to stay in the 9 regions. Following the drastic changes in the 9 regions, treasures appeared in the 9 regions one after another. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth also became incomparably rich. It could be said that the 9 regions were now a first-class cultivation holy land. Even second-class star domains could not compare to the 9 regions. That was why so many martial artists and demon immortals established sects in the 9 regions. Boom! As Chu Fengmian flew, he saw the sects of the 9 regions being destroyed one after another. It was already not easy for the sects of the 9 regions to give birth to an Emperor Gu. However, the weakest of these invading martial artists and demon immortals were at the Emperor realm, and Emperor Gu could be found everywhere. They were unable to put up any resistance. Another third-rate sect was destroyed. The place where this sect was located was taken over by others, becoming a new force. Scenes like this were happening all the time in the 9 regions. Humph! Chu Fengmian looked at the newly established sects with an extremely cold gaze and snorted coldly. After all, he was a native of the 9 regions. He had grown up in the 9 regions. Seeing the 9 regions being overtaken by outsiders and the sects of the 9 regions being destroyed, Chu Fengmian's heart was filled with murderous intent. Sooner or later, I will make these sects and people scram out of the 9 regions. The 9 regions only belong to the people of the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian's heart was filled with rage. As a native of the 9 regions, he could not tolerate these outsiders flaunting their power in the 9 regions. However, Chu Fengmian also knew that he wasn't strong enough to chase all these people out of the 9 regions. In the catastrophe of the 9 regions, Chu Fengmian was just a small character. It was not easy for him to protect himself. This time, he returned to the 9 regions to protect the Sword Dao sect that he had established. Let's go to the northern territory. Chu Fengmian suppressed the murderous intent in his heart. He pushed his escape light to the extreme and entered the northern territory. The situation in the Northern Territory was very similar to the Southern Territory. With the upheaval of the 9 regions, more and more treasures appeared. It was no longer a treasure land like the Returning Ruins Heaven or the Thousand Treasure Heaven. Treasures could appear in any random place in the 9 regions. First, he set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2067. Every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. This was the current 9 domains. Every inch of land, every mountain, and every city was being fought over by countless experts. This was because no one knew which piece of land would contain treasures. However, whoever could occupy a large piece of land would have the upper hand. On the way to the North region, Chu Fengmian casually captured a few demon immortals and asked about the situation in the 9 domains. Currently, in the 9 domains, apart from the 7 major sects, which could still fend off the demon immortals from other stellar domains, the other sects were in extreme danger. The 7 major sects had dominated the 9 domains for 10,000 years. Their foundation was unfathomable. It was said that even some celestial realm experts who had been in seclusion had been awakened in order to fend off the attacks of the demon immortals from other stellar domains. Chu Fengmian was not surprised that there were celestial realm experts in the 7 major sects. The last time Chu Fengmian left the Returning Ruins sky, he encountered some demon immortals from the 7 major sects 10,000 years ago. In 10,000 years, even a small disciple could become a patriarch. It was not surprising that the geniuses of the 7 major sects had stepped into the celestial realm. Moreover, although the 7 sects had paid a great price in the bloody battle that had besieged the Sword Dao sect, and almost all of their experts had died, there were still a few old farts that had survived. These old farts were famous experts 10,000 years ago and had lived for 10,000 years. Their strength was not to be underestimated. Only their emergence could deter the demon immortals from other stellar domains and protect the 7 major sects. However, the 7 major sects were not in a good situation. Their forces were being eroded bit by bit. Of course, they were much better off than the 9 domains sects that had been destroyed. Chu Fengmian breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that the 7 major sects were still safe and sound. Although the 7 major sects were his sworn enemies, Chu Fengmian wanted to avenge them personally. Moreover, if even the 7 major sects could not fend off the attacks of the demon immortals from other stellar domains, then the 9 domains would be in a real catastrophe. No force could survive. Although the 9 domains' current situation was terrible, it was not to the extreme. Up ahead should be a city in the northern region, Monolith City. As Chu Fengmian flew, a city entered his vision. This city was called Monolith City, and it was also a big city in the northern domain. In the northern region, other than Sword Principal City, there were some other large cities, and Monolith City was one of them. Seeing the Monolith City, Chu Fengmian approached it. He wanted to see the current situation of the northern region with his own eyes. However, just as he approached the Monolith City, Chu Fengmian heard sounds of fighting and killing. Chu Fengmian frowned. At the same time, a strong smell of blood attracted Chu Fengmian's attention. Chu Fengmian looked over. There were blood stains everywhere in Monolith City. Blood flowed like a river, and many corpses were lying amidst the blood. Some of these people were martial artists from the 9 domains, while others were martial artists and demon immortals from other domains. Chu Fengmian's expression changed drastically when he saw the corpses of some of the martial artists from the 9 domains. The clothes of these martial artists were the clothes of the Sword Principal Sect. The Sword Principal Sect had unified the various forces in the northern domain. Monolith City was also under the control of the Sword Principal Sect. Normally, it was guarded by the Sword Principal Sect's disciples, but now, he saw the corpses of the Sword Principal Sect's disciples. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with boundless anger. The martial artists and demon immortals from other domains were like a catastrophe that swept across the 9 domains. The Sword Principle sect could not stay out of it. Now, the Sword Principle sect was in the middle of this catastrophe. Murderous intent flashed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He pushed his escape light to the extreme and rushed into Monolith City in an instant. At a glance, Chu Fengmian saw about a dozen martial artists and demon immortals from other domains chasing after a group of Sword Principle Sect's disciples. Although there were dozens of Sword Principle Sect's disciples, and they had learned the Sword Principle Sect's sword arts and formed a sword array to fight against the enemy, their strength was far inferior to the martial artists and demon immortals from other domains. Currently, there were not many Emperor Realm disciples in the Sword Principle sect. As for Emperor Gu, there were even fewer of them. However, among these martial artists and demon immortals from other domains, the weakest one was an Emperor Realm master. There were even 7 or 8 Emperor Gu. Even though this group of Sword Principle Sect's disciples had joined forces to form a sword array, they were still no match for this group of martial artists and demon immortals from other domains. They were beaten back repeatedly. From today onwards, Monolith City belongs to our 9 Sons sect. You natives of the 9 domains are not worthy of owning such a city. Now I'll give you a chance. Kneel down obediently and serve our 9 Sons sect. Then I can consider sparing your lives. Otherwise, none of you will live today. These martial artists and demon immortals from other domains all came from the same sect, the 9 Sons sect. The leader of the group stared at the group of Sword Principle sect disciples below and sneered. There was a playful smile in his eyes, as if he was toying with these Sword Principle sect disciples. Bah! What 9 Sons sect? The Northern Territory belongs to our Sword Principle sect. How dare you attack Monolith City? When our Sword Principle sect's old ancestor comes, only death awaits you. Hearing the words of the 9 Sons sect disciple, a young disciple from the Sword Principle sect shouted angrily. You want us to submit? Dream on. You don't know the meaning of death. The 9 Sons sect disciple sneered when he heard this. He glanced at the surrounding 9 Sons sect disciples and said coldly, "A bunch of ignorant fools. Kill them all. Kill! Kill!" The 9 Sons sect disciples laughed ferociously and attacked at the same time. Countless people attacked at the same time, wanting to kill all of these Sword Principle sect disciples. Not good. When they saw the 9 Sons sect's disciples attack, the Sword Dao sect's disciples within the sword formation paled. They knew that they were about to die. Sword. At this moment, a sword light suddenly descended from the sky. This sword light swept through everything. Chu Fengmian did not hesitate and attacked immediately. These 9 Sons sect disciples dared to kill the Sword Principle sect disciples, which enraged Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was already furious. Now that he encountered these 9 Sons sect disciples chasing after the Sword Principle sect disciples, it was the perfect time to vent his anger. Chu Fengmian's sword light contained boundless killing intent. As the sword light swept across, almost all of the 9 Sons sect disciples were cut in half at the waist. Their blood essence was mercilessly wiped out. He did not give the 9 Sons sect disciples a chance to rebuild their bodies. He killed them all. Chapter 2068. Chu Fengmian's sword light flashed and killed more than half of the 9 Sons sect disciples. Who is it? How dare you meddle in the affairs of the 9 Sons sect? Do you have a death wish? Kill him! A few of the 9 Sons sect disciples attacked Chu Fengmian when they saw him rushing over with the sword in his hand. However, before they could do anything, Chu Fengmian's sword light fell mercilessly on them. Whoosh! Another sword light fell and several more 9 Sons sect disciples died at Chu Fengmian's sword. Their bodies were pierced through mercilessly by the sword light. Not a single one of them survived. They were all killed. SSS. The leader of the Nine Sons sect disciples was startled when he saw Chu Fengmian slaughtering the Nine Sons sect disciples like he was chopping vegetables. He hurriedly shouted when he saw Chu Fengmian charging towards him. Senior, the Nine Sons sect is a force from the third-grade Nine Sons star region. The patriarch of the Nine Sons sect is in the vicinity. Please spare the Nine Sons sect some face. The Nine Sons sect disciple shouted at Chu Fengmian. The Nine Sons star zone was considered one of the top powers among the third-grade star zones. The Nine Sons sect was the biggest power in the Nine Sons star zone. The Nine Sons sect disciple shouted the name of the Nine Sons sect in an attempt to intimidate Chu Fengmian. However, Chu Fengmian acted as if he hadn't heard the words of the Nine Sons sect disciple. He took a step forward and arrived in front of the Nine Sons sect disciple. The sword in his hand fell mercilessly and killed the Nine Sons sect disciple. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's cold voice rang out as the sword fell. So what if you are from the Nine Sons sect? How dare you bully the Sword Dao sect? From now on, there is no need for the Nine Sons sect to continue existing. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. He swept his gaze across the remaining Nine Sons sect disciples and slashed down without hesitation. One by one, the Nine Sons sect disciples were all killed by Chu Fengmian. The hands of these Nine Sons sect disciples were stained with the blood of the Sword Dao school disciples. They all deserved to die. Down below, the disciples of the Dao of the Sword School had felt as if they were facing the end of the world. However, the sudden turn of events caused them to stare in shock. Chu Fengmian had suddenly appeared and slaughtered all of the Nine Sons sect disciples, saving their lives. Thank you, Senior. Seeing Chu Fengmian's figure descend, several Sword Dao sect disciples looked at Chu Fengmian and hurriedly wanted to thank him. However, the moment they saw Chu Fengmian's appearance, their voices stopped abruptly. Immediately after, a voice of disbelief rang out. Sovereign! It's the Sovereign! Just now, Chu Fengmian's speed was too fast, so these Sword Dao sect disciples didn't see Chu Fengmian's appearance, but now that Chu Fengmian descended, they immediately recognized Chu Fengmian's identity. Chu Fengmian had shown his face at the opening of the sect. Although it was only once, the disciples of the Sword Dao sect were extremely respectful to Chu Fengmian. Now that he saw Chu Fengmian, he immediately recognized Chu Fengmian. How is the Sword Dao gate now? Chu Fengmian directly asked. Right now, the flames of war were everywhere in the northern region. Since the disciples of the Nine Sons sect had come to seize Monolith City, then the situation in the other cities in the northern region wouldn't be any better. Just a few days ago, the Nine Sons sect, the Night sect, the 100 Beasts sect, the Diana sect, and the Yin-Yang sect suddenly teamed up and attacked the Northern Territory. The entire Northern Territory was engulfed in the flames of war. The strength of the 5 great sects is incomparably powerful. Just our Sword Dao sect alone couldn't withstand them and was beaten back repeatedly. The elders of the Sword Dao sect immediately gave the order to transfer the disciples of the Sword Dao sect to the Sacred Dragon's secret domain in the Daluo star field. However, the 5 great sects acted too quickly, so some disciples still haven't returned. We were ordered to protect the disciples of the Sword Dao sect in Monolith City, but these disciples of the Nine Sons sect suddenly came and attacked Monolith City. Although we fought with our lives on the line, a large number of our junior brothers and sisters died in the hands of the Nine Sons sect disciples. As a Sword Dao sect's disciple spoke until here, his eyes were filled with boundless hatred. The 5 great sects, Nine Sons sect, Night Gate Hall, 100 Beasts sect. Hearing the names of the Sword Dao sect's disciples, Chu Fengmian's face became more and more unsightly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. The 5 great sects had joined forces to completely destroy the Sword Dao sect and divide the northern region. In just a few days, the Sword Dao sect had suffered such a calamity. Although Chu Fengmian had left behind a large amount of resources for the Sword Dao sect, their strength had improved by leaps and bounds. However, the Sword Dao sect still couldn't withstand the joint forces of the 5 great sections. In just 3 days, who knew how many disciples of the Sword Dao sect had been killed? None of the forces in the 9 regions would be able to escape from this calamity, including the Sword Dao sect. How dare they attack the Sword Dao sect? There's no need for the 5 great sects to exist. Killing intent exploded in Chu Fengmian's eyes. All of you, return to the Sword Dao sect now. This jade talisman can be used to fight the enemy when you encounter them. It can also be used to save the disciples of the Sword Dao sect on the way. Chu Fengmian glanced at the disciples of the Sword Dao sect, and a jade talisman condensed in his palm. This jade talisman contained about 1% of Chu Fengmian's power. Now, with 1% of Chu Fengmian's power, he was almost much stronger than a half-step celestial being, realm warrior or demon god. This jade talisman could protect the disciples of the Sword Dao sect and safely return to the Sword Dao sect. As for Chu Fengmian, he had more important things to do. Let's go. Chu Fengmian opened his spiritual sense. Almost the entire northern region was within Chu Fengmian's sight. Fierce battles were breaking out in almost every city in the northern region. The disciples of the 5 great sects were engaged in bloody battles with the disciples of the Sword Dao sect. Blood flowed like rivers, and the ground was covered with blood. Chu Fengmian glanced at the surrounding situation, and then his body flew in the direction of the nearest city. Haha, this little Sword Dao sect is just SOSO. It's said that it's an ancient sect of the 9 regions. I think it's not even comparable to a sect of a 3rd-grade star region. It's a waste to leave such a good place like the 9 regions to these trash. In a city of the northern region, in Hong City, a battle was also going on. The situation in Hong City was not much better than the situation in Monolith City. A black-robed man was chasing the disciples of the Sword Dao sect in Hong City. First, set a small target, such as 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 2069. Each of the black-robed men held a spiritual sword in their hands. Each of the spiritual swords was stained with a thick layer of blood. These black-robed cultivators all belonged to the same faction, the disciples of the Night Gate Palace. The 5 major sects had joined forces to attack the Sword Principal sect. Countless disciples of the 5 major sects had also entered the North region to hunt down the disciples of the Sword Principal sect and seize the cities in the North region. The Sword Principal sect is too weak. The 9 regions are such a good place. In my opinion, the trash of the 9 regions are not qualified to own it. Kill all the natives of the 9 regions. Awesome. It's so fun to kill these so-called sacred region natives. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace laughed as they slaughtered the martial artists in the city. Even if the martial artists were not disciples of the Sword Principal sect, the disciples of the Night Gate Palace did not let them go. In their eyes, the natives of the 9 regions were trash. They would kill them for fun. Damn it. The disciples of the Sword Principal sect were enraged when they saw the disciples of the Night Gate Palace killing the martial artists in the city. They formed a sword formation and charged towards the disciples of the Night Gate Palace. You're courting death. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace sneered and attacked together. Each of the disciples of the Night Gate Palace was stronger than Emperor Gu. Rumble. Under the joint attack of the disciples of the Night Gate Palace, the shockwave formed by the disciples of the Sword Principal sect was immediately destroyed. Violent spiritual energy surged out from the shockwave. Some of the weaker martialists in Hong City simply could not withstand the aftershock and were shaken to death by the aftershock. A bunch of trash, they deserved to die. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace burst into laughter when they saw this scene. What should we do with the disciples of the Sword Principal sect? Kill them? That's too easy on them. I heard that many of the natives of the 9 regions have obtained many fortuitous encounters. Let's capture them and interrogate them. Maybe we'll get something out of them. That's right. Even if we don't get anything out of them, we can still torture them. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace chatted amongst themselves for a while. Their faces were filled with ferocious smiles as they looked at the disciples of the Sword Dao sect. Suddenly, one of the disciples of the Night Gate Palace made his move. He waved his hand and a gigantic black hand descended from the sky. The huge black hand wanted to suppress the disciples of the Sword Principal sect. Swoosh! Suddenly, a beam of sword light descended from the sky. The sword glow was blood-red in color. It was 100 zhang long, as if it had traveled across a distance of 10,000 li. It slashed at the disciples of the Night Gate Palace. The black hand was the first to be slashed apart by the sword light. What's going on? There's a powerhouse. Block of the swords of the Sword Principal. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace were shocked when they saw the incoming sword light. They did not expect someone to attack at this moment. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace sect quickly retreated and used all their techniques to form layers of defense in an attempt to block the attack. However, all of their defenses were useless against the blood-red Sword Principal of the Sword Principal of the Night Gate Palace sect. All of their defenses were destroyed by the blood-red Sword Principal of the Sword Principal of the Night Gate Palace sect. In the next moment, the blood-red sword light slashed towards the disciples of the Night Gate Palace. The disciples of the Night Gate Palace were unable to fight back at all. Under the attack of the sword light, they were completely annihilated. Not a single drop of essence blood was left behind, and all signs of life were extinguished. All disciples of the Sword Principal sect returned to the Sword Principal sect. The Sword Principal of the Sword Principal of the Night Gate Palace sect disappeared, leaving only a voice behind. At the same time, a jade talisman fell in front of a disciple of the Sword Principal sect. It's the sect leader. The sect leader is back. The sect leader is here to save us. Some of the disciples of the Sword Principal sect were overjoyed when they heard the voice. Let's go. Let's return to the Sword Principal sect. Such a scene was happening all the time in the Northern Territory. Chu Fengmian was traveling at full speed in the Northern Territory. He went to one city after another and killed all the cultivators and demon gods who had slaughtered the disciples of the Sword Principal sect. He did not leave a single one alive. It did not matter which force they belonged to, what their origin was, what their background was, or what star field they came from. Anyone who dared to go against the Sword Principal sect was a dead man in Chu Fengmian's eyes. In just half an hour, all the cultivators and demon gods from foreign star fields in dozens of cities in the Northern Territory were killed by Chu Fengmian alone. Hundreds of cultivators and demon gods had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Almost all of them were cultivators and demon gods above the Emperor realm. Emperor Gu and even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Sure enough, the disciples of the 5 great sects have all evacuated. Chu Fengmian's soul sense shrouded the entire Northern Territory. He had a panoramic view of the situation in the Northern Territory. Chu Fengmian found that the disciples of the 5 great sects had received orders to leave the Northern Territory one by one. The 5 great sects would naturally know that Chu Fengmian had massacred the disciples of the 5 great sects. To the 5 major sects, an ancient emperor was considered a core disciple. Now that Chu Fengmian had killed hundreds of them, it was a huge blow to the 5 major sects' morale. They would not rashly send more disciples before figuring out what was going on. However, Chu Fengmian also knew in his heart that since these 5 major sects were eyeing the northern domain, it was impossible for them to let go of the Sword Dao sect. They just couldn't figure out what had happened for them to suddenly withdraw their troops. However, they would definitely make a comeback in the near future. If they don't make a comeback, it will be more troublesome. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. The 5 great sects dared to join forces to attack the Sword Principal sect. Killing these disciples was nothing to Chu Fengmian. It could not quell the anger in Chu Fengmian's heart at all. The anger in his heart could only be quelled slightly after Chu Fengmian destroyed all the 5 great sects. When the 5 great sects made a comeback, it would be time for Chu Fengmian to vent his anger. Let's go back to the Sword Principal sect. Chu Fengmian went to the cities in the Northern Territory and did not remember to return to the Sword Principal sect. Now that the battle in the Northern Territory had subsided, it was time for Chu Fengmian to return to the Sword Principal sect. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and the space in front of him was immediately torn apart. A space passage appeared and Chu Fengmian stepped into it. First, he set a small goal such as 1 second. Remember, Bookhouse. Chapter 2070. In the Depths of the Void in the Sword Dao Sect. In the main hall of the Sword Dao Sect, there were many experts, including Emperor Gu, 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, and half-step Celestial Realm experts. These people were the upper echelons of the Sword Dao Sect. After Chu Fengmian had subdued the 4 major forces of the Daluo star field, the disciples of the 4 major forces had been integrated into the Sword Dao Sect and became a part of it. Later on, Chu Fengmian had subdued the Yanluo star field and the Blue Dragon sect. The Sword Dao sect was no longer the same as before. Not only did the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu have many half-step Celestial Realm experts now. In the deepest part of the hall there were 3 ancient figures. They were high and mighty, and their statuses were extraordinary. One of them was an extremely powerful old man, who exuded an ancient majestic aura. He was the old ancestor of the Blue Dragon sect, the Mad Dragon Emperor. Previously in the vast sea star field, Chu Fengmian wanted to sneak into the sacrificial lake alone, so he asked the Mad Dragon Emperor to bring the Princess of the Sea back to the Sword Dao sect. The Sword Dao sect was greatly affected by the turmoil in the 9 domains, so the Mad Dragon Emperor stayed in the Sword Dao sect. The remaining 2 were the 2 deputy sect leaders of the Sword Dao sect, Han Yueli and Luo Shi. When Chu Fengmian left the Sword Dao sect and went to the vast sea star field, the 2 of them had stepped into the half-step Celestial Realm with the help of the countless resources that Chu Fengmian had left behind. They were only a step away from the Celestial Realm. Han Yueli and Luo Shi were geniuses among geniuses. Han Yueli had the innate divine body, and she had received the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. After receiving the resources that Chu Fengmian had left behind, her strength had increased rapidly. As for Luo Shi, although she was not as talented as Han Yueli, her body had been affected by Little Nine. She had condensed the bloodline of an innate divine beast. In terms of talent, she was no longer inferior to an innate divine body. Her strength had also improved by leaps and bounds. Not only them, but the geniuses of the Daluo star domain, such as Yen Hanshi, Emperor Yen, and the others, had all stepped into the half-step celestial being realm. The drastic changes in the 9 regions had turned the entire 9 regions into a land of treasures. Treasures could be found everywhere. Among the disciples of the Sword Dao School, there were also some geniuses who had obtained amazing adventures and stepped into Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations. Some of them even stepped into the half-step Celestial Realm and became one of the higher-ups of the Sword Dao School. The strength of the Sword Slayer King, He Luo, Deng Ling, and the others had also improved tremendously. Although they had not stepped into the half-step Celestial Being Realm, they were already invincible figures among the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian had gone to the Canghai star domain and obtained countless adventures. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Now, the Sword Dao School was the same. It could already be considered a major force in the 9 regions. However, the Sword Dao School had occupied the entire North region and was also spied on by countless people. The joint attack of the 5 major sects had caught the Sword Dao school a little off guard. The sudden change had plunged the entire North region into chaos. Now, all the experts of the Sword Dao school had gathered together to discuss this matter. In the past 3 days, the joint attack of the 5 major sects had killed or injured 30% of our disciples. If this goes on, it's not a solution. We have to make a decision. Deputy sect leaders, I wonder if the Sword Dao school should completely give up on the North region or fight to the end. A young man stood up in the hall and suddenly spoke. The young man wasn't very tall, but there was a shocking sword intent behind him all the time. Feeling the shocking sword intent, none of the people present dared to look down on this young man. This young man was the Sword Slayer King. He used to be an expert of the Qin Empire. Later, he was subdued by Chu Fengmian and submitted to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had even taught him swordsmanship. Now, his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. His swordsmanship had also improved along with his strength. The Sword Slayer King was now at the peak of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's realm, but his sword had once killed a half-step celestial being realm expert. Such strength had completely established his position in the Sword Dao school. He was the hall master of the sword-holding hall in the Sword Dao school. Now, he was in charge of patrolling the entire North region. When he spoke, he frowned and there was a hint of anger in his tone. The development of the Sword Dao school in this short period of time was already dozens of times stronger than when Chu Fengmian had first established the Sword Dao school. Among the disciples, there were also many sovereigns, including Emperor Gu. The entire Sword Dao school was thriving and could even vaguely be ranked as the 8th major sect in the 9 regions. However, a tall tree attracts the wind. The Sword Dao school's occupation of the entire North region had caused dissatisfaction among many forces. The 5 major forces from other star domains had joined forces to attack the Sword Dao school. For the Sword Dao school, this was no different from a bolt from the blue. Although the Sword Dao school had transferred most of the weak disciples out of the 9 regions to the Sacred Dragon Mystery Domain, the Sword Dao school was still unwilling to leave the North region. But now, the experts of the Sword Dao sect were still unwilling to give up on the Northern region. After all, the Northern region was the foundation of the Sword Dao sect. If they gave up on the Northern region, it would be extremely difficult for the Sword Dao sect to return. Especially if they were to abandon the North region and leave the 9 regions, the Sword Dao school would lose the Holy Land that they had painstakingly cultivated and would be taken by others. This loss was so great that no one was willing to accept it. No, the North region is the foundation of the Sword Dao school. We can't all retreat. Since the 5 major sects want to fight, we'll fight to the end. Our Sword Dao school is never afraid of enemies. An old man suddenly spoke. This old man's body vaguely contained a pure power of the battle dragon. The one who possessed the battle dragon bloodline was the former dragon turtle, Luo He. After Luo He had followed Chu Fengmian, Chu Fengmian had given him a lot of bloodline to upgrade his bloodline. The current Luo He was like a carp that had leaped through the dragon's gate. His bloodline had been completely upgraded and he had achieved the ancient battle dragon bloodline. His strength had also improved by leaps and bounds. He had surpassed many experts and stepped into the peak of the half-step celestial realm. He was one of the top experts in the entire Sword Dao school. As soon as Luo He spoke, many voices were heard. Hall Master Luo He is right. We can't give up on the North region. The North region is related to the sword origin boundary. The sect master spent a lot of effort to create this holy land. We can't give it up. Let's fight. The 5 major sects have gone too far. First, set a small target. For example, 1 second. Remember, book guest residence. Chapter 2071. As the Sword Dao sect grew stronger, the miraculous nature of a sacred ground was revealed. In the Sword Origin world, the disciples of the Sword Dao sect could cultivate 10 times faster than in the outside world. With the sacred ground of the Sword Origin world, the Sword Dao sect could cultivate countless experts. It could be said that the value of this sacred ground was immeasurable. If the Sword Dao sect withdrew from the northern region, they would have to give up on this sacred ground. For the sake of the Sword Origin world, no one in the Sword Dao sect was willing to give it up. Lord Slayer, have you investigated the situation of the 5 major sects? Luo he suddenly looked at Lord Slayer and asked. Yes. Lord Slayer nodded and said in a heavy tone. The 5 major sects are practically the overlords of their respective stellar domains. They are extremely powerful and each of them has a celestial realm ancestor. Each of the 5 major sects has a celestial realm ancestor? Upon hearing Lord Slayer's words, the expressions of many in the hall changed drastically. If each of the 5 major sects had a celestial realm ancestor, it meant that there were at least 5 celestial realm experts in the 5 major sections. In the Sword Dao sect, apart from Mad Dragon Emperor, who was considered a true celestial realm expert, Elder Fan, the sword spirit of the primordial sword, was also considered a celestial realm expert. Other than that, there was also Little Nine, who could fight a celestial realm expert. However, in the Sword Dao sect, there were only 3 people with the strength of the celestial realm. On the side of the 5 major sects, there were at least 5 celestial realm powerhouses. The huge gap in strength caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble with fear. 5 celestial realm experts. Emperor Yan Hanshi, Qing Meng and the others looked extremely solemn. They were all at the peak of the half-step celestial realm. Even in the current 9 regions, they were considered experts and were only a step away from the celestial realm. However, it was precisely because they had stepped into the peak of the half-step celestial realm that they knew the true terror of a celestial realm expert. If there were no amazing fortuitous encounters or super monstrous geniuses, 10 peak half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods added together would not be a match for a true celestial realm expert. This gap of 1 step was like a chasm that could not be crossed. On the side of the 5 major sects, there were at least 2 more celestial realm experts. These 2 celestial realm experts were extremely deadly to the Sword Dao sect. Even if all the disciples of the Sword Dao sect worked together, they might not be a match for these 2 celestial realm experts. Moreover, the 5 great sects had countless disciples. Countless gazes looked towards the depths of the palace, towards the figure seated on the throne. The figure on the throne was the one who could decide the fate of the Sword Dao sect. The Sword Dao gate will not give up on the northern region. Suddenly, a clear and cold voice rang out. The owner of this voice was none other than Han Yueli. Since Chu Fengmian was not here, Han Yueli was in charge of everything in the Sword Dao sect. Her words represented the decision of the Sword Dao sect. All right. Fight to the end. If the 5 great sects want to rob the Sword Dao sect, they'll have to pay the price. Han Yueli's words represented the decision of the entire Sword Dao sect. Everyone in the hall said in unison. Boom. All of a sudden, the entire Sword Origin world began to tremble. Even the Great Hall began to shake. Within the Great Hall, the faces of all the Sword Dao sect experts changed. Streaks of light shot out from the Great Hall as they raised their heads to look at the sky. A crack suddenly appeared in the sky. It was as if the sky of the Origin Sword world had been torn apart by a huge force. A surge of spiritual energy suddenly flew out from the crack. This spiritual energy gradually took the form of a human figure. It stood in the sky and looked down at the people of the Sword Dao sect. Seeing this figure, the faces of the celestial realm experts turned ugly. This figure was the old ancestor of the 9 Sons sect, one of the 5 great sects, the 9 Sons Emperor Wu. He was a true celestial realm expert. although the Nine Suns martial emperor in front of them was only an incarnation formed by spiritual energy. The aura that he emitted made many of the Sword Dao sect's disciples tremble as if they were facing a great enemy. A celestial realm expert, even an avatar formed by a surge of spiritual energy, was more powerful than a peak half-step celestial realm martial artist or demon god. Everyone from the Sword Dao sect is here? This saves me the trouble of looking for you one by one. The Nine Suns Emperor Wu's gaze swept across the crowd. Among the crowd, there was only one celestial realm expert, the Mad Dragon Emperor. His eyes were filled with contempt. Nine Suns Emperor Wu, what are you trying to do by barging into the Sword Dao sect? Han Yueli looked at the Nine Suns Emperor Wu in the sky and said coldly, "What am I trying to do? I'm just here to give the Sword Dao sect a piece of advice. I'll give you 3 days to get the hell out of the northern region." The Nine Suns Emperor Wu sneered. "If you continue to be stubborn, the Sword Dao sect will cease to exist in 3 days. He looked at the crowd below as if he was looking at a dead man. Nine Suns Emperor Wu, do you really think the Sword Dao sect has no one? The Mad Dragon Emperor snorted coldly when he saw the Nine Suns Emperor Wu's arrogant attitude. If you dare to be presumptuous again, your avatar will stay here today. The Mad Dragon Emperor and the Nine Suns Emperor Wu were both celestial realm experts. However, the Nine Suns Emperor Wu in front of them was just an avatar formed by a surge of spiritual energy. Although the avatar of a celestial realm expert was equally powerful, it couldn't be compared to a real celestial realm expert. If the Mad Dragon Emperor was willing to help, it wouldn't be difficult for him to leave his avatar behind. Mad Dragon Emperor? I don't understand why you want to get involved in this mess. Do you think you can protect the Sword Dao sect? The Nine Suns Emperor Wu sneered and said disapprovingly when he heard the Mad Dragon Emperor's words. If I'm alone, it'll be difficult for me to deal with you. However, this time, the 5 great sects have joined forces to fight against the 5 great sects. Let alone you, the Mad Dragon Emperor, even the entire Blue Dragon sect together is just a mayfly trying to shake a tree. The Nine Suns Emperor Wu was very clear about the Mad Dragon Emperor's background. He also knew that the Blue Dragon sect only had one celestial realm expert, the Mad Dragon Emperor. Naturally, he wasn't afraid of the Mad Dragon Emperor. Of course, I'm not here to inform you of this matter. I'm here to send you on another path. The Nine Suns Emperor Wu suddenly changed the topic. First, set a small target. For example, 1 second. Remember Bookhouse. Chapter 2072. Considering that the Sword Dao sect is a native of the 9 regions, the 5 major sects do not intend to exterminate you. If you are willing to give up your sacred land and submit to the 5 major sects, we can give you a chance to stay in the northern region. The Nine Suns martial emperor burst into laughter as he spoke. Damn it! Dream on! The people of the Sword Dao sect shouted angrily when they heard this. Giving up their sacred land and submitting to the 5 major sects was more humiliating than exterminating their sect. Submitting to the 5 major sects was equivalent to becoming a slave. No one would be willing to become a slave even if they were to die in battle. Nine Suns Emperor Wu, is this how you talk nonsense? Han Yueli's face was pale as she said coldly. The coldness in her words made people shudder and feel as if they were in winter. Nine Suns, don't waste your breath on these natives of the 9 regions. In 3 days, we will personally attack the Sword Dao sect. Before Nine Suns Emperor Wu could speak, another figure suddenly appeared beside him. This figure was dressed in a black robe. It was Yi Wuchang, the patriarch of the Night Gate Palace, one of the 5 major sections. He was also an ancient celestial realm patriarch. Yi Wuchang's appearance made the situation even more tense. Another celestial realm expert's clone had arrived. Yi Wuchang said coldly. If the Sword Dao sect still refuses to submit, it will be destroyed. The meaning of his words was clear. Today, 9 Sons Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang came with their spiritual energy clones. In 3 days, they would personally come to attack the Sword Dao sect. Submit, get out of the northern region, or continue to resist until you are destroyed. Make your choice. 9 Sons Emperor Wu sneered and said. He and Yi Wuchang turned around and prepared to leave. Boom. However, at this moment, another crack suddenly appeared in the sky. The Sword Origin world was being torn apart once again. Another Heaven-tier elite has come? Seeing the appearance of this crack, the eyes of countless Sword Dao sect's disciples were filled with despair. 9 Sons Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang aside, there was actually another Sky Realm expert? However, what emerged from the crack was an extremely young figure. Chu Fengmian tore through space and returned to the Sword Dao Gate. Since you're already here, there's no need for you to leave. These 2 clones of yours have gathered quite a bit of energy, so I'll leave them behind as compensation for trespassing into the Sword Dao Gate. As Chu Fengmian spoke, his mind flickered and the entire Sword Origin world fell under his control. The Sword Origin world was a sacred land that Chu Fengmian had created himself. The only person who could truly control the power of the Sword Origin world was Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, the entire Sword Origin world underwent a tremendous change as Chu Fengmian directed his thoughts. Surges of boundless power of heaven and earth suddenly descended and turned into chains in front of Chu Fengmian. These chains merged into the Sword Origin world and completely sealed off the space within it. The spatial cracks behind 9 Sons Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang's clones were suddenly sealed off. Who's there? 9 Sons Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang suddenly noticed this and looked towards Chu Fengmian. Although they had noticed Chu Fengmian's sudden arrival, they didn't take him seriously at all. A half-step Sky Realm expert was no different from an ant in their eyes. They only looked towards Chu Fengmian when they sensed the changes in the Sword Origin world and the spatial cracks being sealed off. Sect Master. It's the Sect Master. The Sect Master is back. The Sword Dao sect's disciples below recognized Chu Fengmian at a glance. Countless exclamations rang out. The Sword Dao sect's disciples, who were originally gloomy, were suddenly overjoyed and excited. All the haze seemed to have been swept away with Chu Fengmian's appearance. In the Sword Dao sect, Chu Fengmian was a living legend. He had once established the Sword Dao sect by himself and swept across the northern region. He had single-handedly resisted the joint attack of the 7 major sects of the 9 regions. In the hearts of countless Sword Dao sect's disciples, Chu Fengmian was a godlike existence. He was high and mighty, but he had always been protecting the Sword Dao sect. Now that Chu Fengmian had returned, the fear in the hearts of the Sword Dao sect's disciples towards the 5 major sects was swept away. In their hearts, as long as Chu Fengmian returned, all the dangers would be easily resolved. He's finally back. Han Yueli and Luo Shi's gazes also fell on Chu Fengmian. Their eyes were filled with joy and their cold expressions changed slightly. In Chu Fengmian's absence, the Sword Dao sect had been supported by the 2 of them. Now that Chu Fengmian had returned, they could finally relax. Chu Fengmian was the pillar of the entire Sword Dao sect. His return made everyone ecstatic. Sect Master? Little fella, you're the Sect Master of the Sword Dao sect? A little fella of the half-step celestial realm? 9 Sons Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang were a little stunned when they heard the voices of the Sword Dao sect's disciples. They had also heard that the Sect Master of the Sword Dao sect was a figure that couldn't be underestimated. There were many rumors about Chu Fengmian in the 9 regions. The 2 of them had also heard about it, but when they saw Chu Fengmian and found out that he was just a half-step celestial realm expert, they immediately sneered. No matter how strong a half-step celestial realm expert was, He was just a little fella in front of a celestial realm expert. He was not worthy of their attention. Since the main character is here, we don't need to waste 3 days. Nine Suns Emperor Wu looked at Chu Fengmian and said proudly. Little fella, I'll give you a chance. Lead the Sword Dao sect and submit to the 5 major sections. This is the only chance for the Sword Dao sect to survive. Otherwise, the entire Sword Dao sect will be reduced to nothing in 3 days. Ha 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 ha, what a good chance. Chu Fengmian suddenly laughed. Then I'll also give the 3 major sects a chance. 3 days? Then I'll also give the 5 major sects 3 days. Chu Fengmian looked at Nine Suns Emperor Wu and said with a mocking smile. 3 days later, I want the old ancestors of the 5 major sects to bring the heads of all the disciples of the 5 major sects to kneel in front of me and cripple their own cultivation. Then I'll consider sparing your lives. Otherwise, the 5 major sects will cease to exist in 3 days. First, he set a small target, such as 1 second. Chapter 2073. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he stepped forward and walked towards the 9 Suns Martial Emperor and Yi Wuchang. Chu Fengmian's words were so arrogant that even the disciples of the Sword Dao sect were stunned. All the disciples of the Sword Dao sect had a deep understanding of the power of the 5 major sections. Especially behind the 5 major sects, there were 5 celestial realm experts. A celestial realm elite was a lofty and unattainable existence. Devour. But now, Chu Fengmian wanted to annihilate the 5 major sections. Such arrogance made all the disciples of the Sword Dao sect excited. Sect Master is invincible. Annihilate the 5 major sects. The disciples of the Sword Dao sect did not doubt Chu Fengmian's words. In their hearts, Chu Fengmian was an invincible existence. Chu Fengmian said that he wanted to annihilate the 5 major sections. What awaited the 5 major sects was destruction. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, they were stunned. Then, they burst into laughter. His laughter was filled with endless mockery. 9 Suns Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a brat who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Reckless brat! A mere half-step celestial realm expert dares to speak such arrogant words? Ignorant brat, it seems like you don't know how terrifying a true celestial realm expert is. You dare to threaten our 5 major sects with your strength? 9 Suns Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent. Both of them were invincible figures in the celestial realm, overlords of a star field. What arrogance, you want to annihilate our 5 major sects. Even the incarnations of the 2 of us are not something that a mere half-step celestial being like you can contend with. 9 Suns Emperor Wu said with sarcasm in his eyes. Sure enough, you're a native of the 9 regions. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A mere half-step celestial realm expert wants to fight against a celestial realm expert? Fight against a celestial realm expert? Not to mention your clones, even if your real bodies are here today, you will have to stay in the Sword Dao sect, said Chu Fengmian coldly. He looked at the 9 Suns Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang. His eyes were filled with killing intent. What big words. I'd like to see how you, a mere half-step celestial being, are going to hold back this incarnation of mine. 9 Sun Emperor Wu snorted coldly. The moment his voice rang out, his clone took the initiative to move. Countless flames were ignited in the palm of the 9 Suns Emperor Wu. Amidst the flames, a long saber slowly took shape. Boom! The moment this flaming long blade was condensed, all the disciples in the Sword Dao sect felt that the air had become hot because of the condensation of this flaming long blade. Although this flaming long blade was only condensed by the Nine Suns Emperor Wu's spiritual power, its power was not inferior to a true heaven-grade spiritual artifact. The Nine Suns Emperor Wu held the flaming long blade in his hand and looked at Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, Jiuyang Wudi took the initiative to attack. The flaming long blade in his hand flickered as it descended from the sky and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. The blade of the flaming long blade contained not only an incomparably sharp blade, but also scorching flames. The fire-controlling Dao and the supreme blade Dao complemented each other in the hands of the Nine Suns Emperor Wu. Be it the fire-controlling Dao or the supreme blade Dao, the Nine Suns Emperor Wu had already reached an extremely high level. This blade descended from the sky and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. It was as if nothing could stop the sharpness of this blade. Boom! Even the sword origin world, which had already become a holy land, seemed to be unable to withstand the sharpness of this blade. As the blade passed by, countless spaces collapsed. This is the strength of a true Heaven Realm expert? How terrifying! The Heaven Realm is an existence that can ascend to immortality. It is a completely different realm from the Emperor Realm and the half-step Heaven Realm. This is no longer a human, but an immortal. This is just one of the incarnations of the Nine Suns Emperor Wu. Countless Sword Dao sect disciples raised their heads and looked at the blade that was descending. Their hearts were filled with incomparable fear. Even if a little of the power contained in this blade poured out, they would definitely die. The only thing they felt from this blade was destruction. Unstoppable destruction. Every warrior and demon god who saw a celestial realm expert in action for the first time had the same feeling in their hearts. That was power that could not be resisted. Even the half-step Heaven Realm demon gods felt that they were like ants in front of the Nine Suns Emperor Wu. The difference between an immortal and an immortal was vividly displayed. In particular, the most terrifying thing was that this Nine Suns Emperor Wu was not even the Nine Suns Emperor Wu's true body. It was just an incarnation of his spiritual energy. The strength of an incarnation was already so terrifying. The strength of the Nine Suns Emperor Wu's true body was somewhat unimaginable to the crowd. Many worried gazes looked at Chu Fengmian. Even in the hearts of the Sword Dao sect disciples, Chu Fengmian had always been an invincible existence. However, the moment they saw the boundless strength of the Nine Suns Emperor Wu, their hearts were somewhat shaken. They were somewhat worried that Chu Fengmian would not be a match for the Nine Suns Emperor Wu. After all, Chu Fengmian was only a half-step Heaven Realm expert. How could he cross the gap between an immortal and an immortal? However, what happened next was unforgettable for them. Looking at the blade descending from the sky, Chu Fengmian's face remained as calm as ever, without the slightest ripple of emotion. It was as if the blade was ordinary in Chu Fengmian's eyes and was not worthy of his attention. A mere incarnation of the immortal realm dares to attack me? I don't even care if your true body is here, let alone a mere incarnation. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Destroy! The moment Chu Fengmian's voice fell, he suddenly raised his right hand, aimed it at the sky, and made a grabbing motion. He grabbed the blade of the Nine Suns Emperor Wu with his bare hands. This? Countless Sword Dao sect disciples, including Lord Slayer and Luo He, were stunned when they saw Chu Fengmian's current actions. Chu Fengmian actually wanted to block such a tyrannical blade with his bare hands? Courting death. Yi Wuchang sneered when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. In his opinion, Chu Fengmian's actions were no different from courting death. However, under everyone's gaze, Chu Fengmian's right hand had already grabbed the sky, and the blade ruthlessly slashed at Chu Fengmian's palm. Chapter 2074. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. The moment the blade hit Chu Fengmian's palm, an earth-shattering boom erupted. Boundless power and scorching flames burst out. In Chu Fengmian's palm, all the power of the 9 Suns Martial Emperor's blade poured out in torrents. Jian Jun, Luo He, Qing Meng, Yan Hanshi and the others felt their hearts tremble when they sensed the center of the explosion of power. The center of the explosion of power was so powerful that any half-step celestial being realm martial artist or demon god would have a slim chance of survival if they stepped into it. Even they felt that once they were trapped in the center of the explosion of power, it would be difficult to resist the power of the blade even if they used all their means and trump cards. But now Chu Fengmian was actually going to take on such a terrifying blade with his bare hands? If this action had been done by someone else, then in the hearts of the crowd, that person would have died without a doubt. But the person who did this was Chu Fengmian. In the hearts of countless Sword Dao sect disciples, Chu Fengmian was invincible. In the hearts of countless Sword Dao sect disciples, they still believed that Chu Fengmian would win. This brat is definitely going to die. A puny half-step celestial being wants to fight against a real celestial being? The 9 Suns Martial Emperor and Yi Wuchang looked at each other with a smile in their eyes. In their eyes, Chu Fengmian was definitely going to die. But at this moment, the rumbling in the sky suddenly stopped. The raging flames and the blade seemed to have disappeared in an instant. All the power had disappeared without a trace. All of this happened so suddenly that everyone was stunned for a moment. Countless eyes looked at the sky and looked carefully. Only then did they see a scene that they would never forget. They saw Chu Fengmian standing in the sky, unscathed. 9 Suns Emperor Wu's blade was suddenly grasped in Chu Fengmian's palm. This blade was now in Chu Fengmian's hand like a toy, pinched in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand. No matter how strong the power of the blade was, it couldn't hurt Chu Fengmian at all. The entire Sword Origin world was silent as everyone stared at the scene before them. Many of them were unable to believe what they were seeing. Such a powerful blade was caught by Chu Fengmian with his bare hands? And Chu Fengmian was unscathed? It wasn't just the Sword Dao sect disciples. 9 Suns Invincible was also deeply shocked. Although this was only a blade thrown out by one of his incarnations, the power of a celestial being realm martial artist's incarnation was beyond the half-step celestial being realm. With this incarnation, it would be able to deal with 2 or 3 peak half-step celestial beings demon gods. However, the blade he had shot forth with was actually caught by Chu Fengmian with his bare hands. He was unable to understand how Chu Fengmian had managed to accomplish such a feat. This brat is not easy. Let's kill him together. Yi Wuchang's eyes were extremely cold as he stared at Chu Fengmian. He could already tell that Chu Fengmian wasn't an ordinary half-step celestial being realm martial artist. Yi Wuchang roared in anger and suddenly attacked with a thunderous momentum. As soon as Yi Wuchang attacked, he waved his big hand and the whole sky fell into darkness. It covered the sky and split the sun. The entire Sword Origin boundary fell into darkness. In the depths of the darkness, an incomparably huge palm descended from the sky and blasted towards Chu Fengmian. In an instant, the sky and earth collapsed as if doomsday had arrived. The 9 Suns Martial Emperor also made his move at the same time. Countless flames ignited on his body. The 9 Suns Martial Emperor turned into a huge fireball. The endless flames were burning, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Countless flames turned into a huge fire dragon, roaring and rushing towards Chu Fengmian. 9 Suns Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang, the 2 celestial being realm powerhouses, suddenly joined forces and attacked Chu Fengmian. Although these 2 were just incarnations, the incarnations of celestial being realm powerhouses were still extremely terrifying. Their boundless power made people tremble. However, Chu Fengmian's expression was incomparably indifferent as he watched all of this with indifferent eyes. Chu Fengmian slowly raised his hand and waved. Boom! Endless dragon power gathered in Chu Fengmian's palm and turned into an incomparably huge war dragon claw. This claw of the war dragon swept through everything in its path. Bang! The fire dragon that Nine Suns Emperor Wu had created was smashed into pieces by the war dragon claw. At the same time, Yi Wuchang's giant hand of darkness, which had transformed into the eternal darkness, was torn apart. The war dragon claw swept everything away and broke the darkness, returning the sword origin boundary to its original state. Not good! Let's go! The moment Chu Fengmian used the war dragon claw, Nine Suns Emperor Wu and Yi Wuchang suddenly understood that Chu Fengmian's strength wasn't as simple as it seemed. The two of them had spent a lot of effort to condense these two clones. Losing these two clones would affect their strength to some extent. Now they were no match for Chu Fengmian with just these two incarnations. Therefore, the two incarnations immediately burst with power and soared into the sky, ready to leave the sword origin boundary. Whoosh! Whoosh! The speed of the two incarnations was so fast that they disappeared before everyone's eyes in an instant. However, an even faster escape light surpassed the speed of the two incarnations. Chu Fengmian took a step forward and arrived beside the two incarnations. Leave these two incarnations behind. Chu Fengmian's voice was cold as he suddenly activated his spiritual power and grabbed at the incarnations. Rumble! The Nine-Sun Martial Emperor and Yi Wuchang still wanted to try and resist. However, all their methods were meaningless in the face of Chu Fengmian's massive palm. In an instant, the two incarnations fell into Chu Fengmian's palm. Chu Fengmian didn't give them any chance to escape. He immediately activated the sky-devouring secret technique. A deep black hole appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. He threw the two incarnations into the sky-devouring secret technique. The sky-devouring secret technique was immediately activated. The consciousness of the two incarnations was obliterated, leaving behind only incomparably pure energy. Chu Fengmian even saw a few drops of essence blood among them. Incarnations condensed from essence blood? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.